What is up, everybody? We are ready for the Yap of Us episode 4, talking about episode 3 of HBO's The Last of Us. As always, I am the Zoo Boy, Michael, which I forgot to edit that in. I'm going to have to do that right now. But while I'm doing that, introduce yourselves, Buck.
I'm Austin, also known as Tangy Fungus.
Tyler, T-Mac.
Also Tyler, or Dr. Foregone, as my closest friends call me.
All right, there we go. We're good. So, as everyone could tell, I'm sure, a little different tonight. I'm in Disney World. So, got a different setup, but still going to stream, of course. And we had to start a little late, but we're ready to go. Ready to yap. So, as always, we're going to start with easy. What do we think of the episode? Thumbs up, thumbs down, somewhere in the middle. Very interesting, because my initial reaction was like this. And then I sit on it a little bit.
Watch it twice?
I didn't watch it twice, but I skim it as I do when I take notes. And I liked it more and more. I think my initial reaction was just kind of fluff, because it's show original stuff that I didn't really see where they were going with it. But I'm, because of the horde from the episode before last, episode 2, that had fallout in this episode. So I was like, okay, that makes sense for the future. Maybe other things in this episode will make sense for future episodes. So I just felt like, I'm willing to trust. But
yeah, I don't know if you said it on Figure Ball or Out of the Basement. I can't keep up.
Yeah,
but
somewhere.
You said somewhere that they have gained a lot of goodwill, or have earned a lot of goodwill.
Yes.
And honestly, I share that sentiment.
Yeah,
as well,
for sure. So let's get right into it. The name of the episode is The Path. And as I'm sure you guys know, and probably other fans of The Last of Us, The Path is a fantastic song by Gustavo Santaolalla. And it is the song that plays at the end of Last of Us Part 1 and Last of Us Season 1. Ellie says, okay. Credits, song plays. And I love that song. It has been number 1 on my Spotify Wrapped for the last 5 years. So I just listen to that all the time, at least a few times a week, probably more. But the end credits of this episode had a nice electric guitar version. And listening to it, I don't know if you guys are aware, but I was like, man, I recognize this guitar sound. Who is that? And kept listening to it, didn't know, so I looked it up, and it's Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave. Yeah, so awesome. he posted about it on Instagram, and once I realized that I found out that it was him, I was like, oh, easily. If anybody knows Audioslave's Like a Stone, there's parts of that song that are very, very reminiscent of how he plays the guitar in The Path. So that was really cool. And that's been added to Spotify, so I've been listening to that all week. But
I love this trend of the song, like the episodes being named after songs.
Yes.
I think that's awesome.
And this is a Last of Us song specifically, so that's really cool. Right. I don't know, 3 out of 7. I'm gonna assume that they're gonna continue this.
Probably.
So that is cool. But as we'll go later into the episode, there have been a lot of grunge things in The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann, clearly a fan of grunge. Nirvana, Pearl Jam. Now Chris Cornell's Audioslave. So clearly a big grunge fan. Before we get into the scenes, though, if anybody noticed, heartbreaking. That's why you don't skip the intro, because the beginning of the
The
intro,
title.
Yeah.
we just see Bella Ramsey. There's no more Pedro Pascal. And then at the end of the intro credits, there's just one silhouette. Only Ellie. There's no more Joel. So
My dumbass didn't even notice that at first. I saw it on the internet later, and I was like, I'm an idiot.
yeah,
I
was
skipped through the credits too, and I didn't even I don't know.
Bro, I had to skip through and get it over with so I could pre-order Grievous. I didn't have time.
that's
to
crazy.
waste.
Right.
I didn't have time to
Right.
waste.
It's funny because I was wondering if they were going to do that, because I know at the end of every episode, or at the beginning of every episode, they always have Joel and Ellie silhouettes. So I was wondering if they would change it, and they did, and it's all sad. But like I said earlier, this episode is almost entirely show original content. So I was a bit apprehensive about it, but at the end of the day, I felt good about it. And I think that Neil Druckmann makes a great point. I can't remember where he said this. Maybe one of you guys know. It might have been the Last of Us podcast, but I wrote it down, and he said, every time we make a change, I tell Craig, if we're going to change something, it better be good. And I 100% agree. The Bill and Frank episode from Last of Us Season 1, that was absolutely, a great change. It added so much to the show. It added depth of character to Bill and Frank, of course. And even showing what an alternate history for Joel, what it could have been. So, and Tess. So I think that when the show strays far from the game, but then it does do something really, really good, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But here, I didn't really know. So I like I said, I was a bit apprehensive. It has to justify its own existence. This is something that I've been very passionate about. When The Last of Us Part 2 was announced, I was very cautious because Last of Us Part 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. And I was like, I don't know. Does this game need a sequel? And I felt the same way about Red Dead Redemption, because I love that game, love how it ends, love the story. And then I was like, man, these two games, maybe they're just, cash grab. Sony wants it, Take-Two wants it for Rockstar. But both games, in my opinion, have far surpassed the original.
Yeah, now you
So-
can't imagine one without the other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think Last of Us Part 2 is much better than the first game, and Red Dead Redemption 2 is much better than the
And I
first
think
game.
that's why they smartly named it Part 2.
Yes. Oh, Neil has talked about that a bunch, where it's not really two. Something like The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. They are sequels. You see, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not like The Lord of the Rings, where it's one movie. When people ask me how to rank the individual films, I can't. I don't know how to do that, because The Lord of the Rings is just one story. And Last of Us, while not intrinsically tied to each other, it certainly is part 2 of the same story. So I was nervous, but I think that it did a great job. And that is something that going forward with the show, and even not just Last of Us, but any other adaptation, it could be a book. I know Austin and I are very excited about the Superman movie, but I have my own concerns about that, because, when they change things like the age of those superheroes, that, gives me pause. But overall, when you're adapting something that I care about, there's goodwill, but also caution. So when they said, I don't know if it was a leak or a rumor or something, but might have been in just reviews, like non-spoiler reviews. But people have said that this episode was the episode with the most changes from the game. But after watching it, I don't really feel like they were changes.
Right. It was
They
like
were
an
additions.
expansion.
Mhm.
Yeah. There were a few changes, but overall it was, a lot of stuff that just wasn't in the game. Because in the game, for people who don't know, after Joel's death, almost the very next day, I think it might have been 1 or 2 days, Ellie goes to Joel's house, takes the gun, and Dina and Ellie go to Seattle. There's no,
let's go get them.
Yeah, there's no long periods of mourning. And of course,
I was going to say, you could almost look at a lot of this as maybe stuff they had, pathed out for the game and then just cut.
Mm-hmm. Neil Druckmann said that it's something that he wanted to do, but for a game felt that he just couldn't do because at the end of the day, there's gameplay and you have to just rush it. Like, none of the stuff that was in this episode could have been played. You'd just be watching a cutscene for 45 minutes, which, Hideo Kojima does it.
Yeah.
But I understand.
I think for me personally is I don't play a lot of story-driven games, but in like The Last of Us, I took a long time at Joel's house. I really wanted to make that experience as cinematic as possible. I really lingered on his wood carvings and
absolutely,
and, his watch and the mug, or even a game like Breath of the Wild. I really have a lot of pause in that game, so I can revel in some of the more serious. There's not a whole lot of story there, but the implied story, I want to revel in it a little bit. I want to take it serious.
And there's a lot of lore there, even if there's not a lot of story for both Joel's house and Breath of the Wild, as you're saying.
Yeah, Joel's house is more reveals more about him than the character himself does.
Yeah,
that's what's cool about it.
Yeah. What's up, Lucy? But I feel that we're getting ahead of ourselves. Don't want to talk too much about Joel's house yet, but just that's something where you can go at your own pace, because I'm sure there are, in fact I know because I've seen people say sometimes people feel like they want to rush through that because not because of they don't like the story, but it's like from Ellie's perspective. Yeah, exactly. Ellie's got to go. She doesn't care. She has a one-track mind. The goal, get to Seattle and kill Abby. So you don't want to spend time in Joel's house. So, and I could see both sides, but I did do what you did, Austin. I stayed, looking at all the little things. And there is some stuff that I don't want to talk about spoilers for the show, of course, but there's some stuff in the house that comes into play later with some of the flashbacks, if you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. In fact, there's multiple. There's quite a few. So that was really interesting to see. But that's enough of the intro. Let's get into the actual episode. So the first episode the first scene of the episode, my bad, we have Tommy with Joel's body. And this is something that I was interested how they were going to show, because Tommy in the show, like Joel, has a different, more emotional depth. So I was really interested to see how Tommy would react to Joel's death. Something that I didn't talk about last episode, and we don't really get an answer this episode, so I'm going to assume no. But you see Tommy go to Maria and just collapse in her arms. And I was wondering if maybe Jesse radioed ahead and said what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could read it as, Tommy's just defeated of everything that happened in Jackson. A lot of people died, as we see in this episode when it pans back. And we see all the corpses, unfortunately, not just Joel. But we don't really get a straight answer. But whatever it is, it shows, again, Tommy, he has more emotional depth, as I said. So, can you guys hear that?
I just did.
I don't know if you turned it up or not, but yeah.
Okay. No, this is Disney fireworks about to start. So I hope that is not exceptionally loud. Otherwise, I'm going to have to mute while you guys talk. It'll only last, I think, 15 minutes. If it is, hopefully it doesn't bother.
It's
If it
not
does
that-
bother
it's
you
not
guys,
that
just let
loud.
me know. Okay.
No, it's fine.
We get some Disney music in the
Yeah,
background.
there you
just,
go.
like,
It's just
breaking
perfect.
down.
Last of Us is a very Disney friendly.
Oh yeah, family friendly show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is like why moments like this is why I like it's being adapted to a television show. It allows us moments where Tommy can sit there and clean Joel's body.
Because
Everything-
Tommy's not the protagonist.
Right.
So in the game, it's following either Joel or Ellie. Now we get to follow other people's perspective, just like we did in season 1. So that's, like you said, it's a scene that can't really happen in the game,
Yeah.
but definitely there was a lot of emotion there. I really felt so bad for Tommy, as we did. I'm sure everyone who watched the episode did, but feel bad for Ellie in the previous episode. So that was a good, comparison.
Yeah, I
between the
think
two.
I grieved Joel more in this episode than I did the prior episode.
Yeah, I'm with you, bro. Because the first episode or the second episode, even in the game, when I see Joel killed, I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel disgust. I don't feel sadness. To me, the moment where I started tearing up in the game is when you're outside Joel's house and you see all the flowers, and I'm like, oh man, this is what Joel meant to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And again, same thing here. You see Joel's house and you see all the
Mailbox full of
flowers.
flowers.
Yep, and that just broke me again. Again, getting ahead of ourselves talking about Joel's house, but
I like. I've said it many times that I really like Tommy as a character, and I think the show is doing him better than the game so far, and it makes him feel like not a glup shitto. Like he's a real character, and you get to really see his emotions, and it's always something that I'm like, we didn't really get to see Tommy exhibit any of this, especially when they got Joel's body back in the game. So I'm glad we can see that in the show.
Line, give Sarah my love.
Oh,
yep,
yeah.
I wrote that down. That was
Dude.
Yeah,
right in the feels, man.
It's interesting because last week some of the stuff that we talked about was like, Tommy not being with Joel when he dies and everything.
Yeah,
kind of losing something, but then you start this episode and you kind of gain something back where you have this very intimate original moment of him, like in all his like hurt and like upset, just cleaning the body and having that line about Sarah. So the show still kind of surprises you, even when they might take some things away that we do love.
It's like a give and take, and you don't really know. Like when they take something away that you don't really know what they're going to give you, and most of the time, what they give you ends up being most of the time pretty good.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, appreciate that, Justin. Love our replay game. But oh shit. Actually, I unplugged my mic a little bit. Not used to this setup. Not used to this setup at all. But like Austin said, the give Sarah my love. That was just heartbreaking because you really see how, we don't get to see in the game Tommy's just emotional reaction,
like private moments,
right? In the game, I don't want to go into too much spoilers because as we've seen this episode, they move things out of order. So I don't know if some of the stuff that was with Tommy will show up in the show, but there is a point where Tommy's talking and you see as the player, and Ellie calls it out too, that it's not really Tommy talking, it's Maria through Tommy. And in this moment, you don't have that. This is pure Tommy. And it's sad because he lost his brother. And that's something that I feel a lot of people should take more note of, because of course the thing that's been talked about a bunch is Ellie losing her father figure. But Tommy also lost a brother. And this episode goes into that. Tommy and at a point Dina and other people in the community, they all talk about how it's not just Ellie. Everybody lost something because Joel meant stuff to other people as well. So that was nice to see. It was sweet. But after that scene, then we have Ellie waking up in the hospital, and she just screams. And I know we said it last week, but it keeps happening. Bella Ramsey continues to show that she's fantastic.
They're on fire.
She's crazy good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that some people don't give them the credit that they deserve, because this was just another episode where I was like, man, you really see how good of an actor they are. And I don't think I talked about this last week, but I did talk about this on Lazy Sunday on Out of the Basement. But some review that I read said a big problem with killing off Joel is they don't know if the show can handle being led by two young women. And I was like, that's a lot Yexy, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a self-report on that.
Yeah. If they say that before this episode or even after this episode, I just don't know how to help you. Like this episode, I already was like on board with Bella carrying this show, knowing that Joel was going to die and they were going to have to shoulder a lot of this. This episode is just proof in the pudding, it's just them. There's not a whole lot of dialogue even that they have like throughout the episode. It's a lot of quiet moments and they are just crushing it. The full spectrum of emotions, from rage to sadness to confusion to there's a whole lot going on there. And I think they really expertly performed every single one of those moments. But we'll kind of get to those specifics a little bit later.
For sure. But specifically in this moment, we do see that Ellie clearly shows that she has the beginnings of PTSD.
Yep.
And, it's unfortunate because probably if she wasn't right there when it happened, she wouldn't be this damaged. But the last thing she sees of Joel is his death. That'll always be burned into her brain. I can't imagine. I don't know. I'm sure most people have, but I've dealt with things of seeing loved ones, it's morbid, but seeing their corpses. And that's something that you don't forget. And I know people, even in my own family, where some people, they don't want to be part of that. They just, because they don't want to remember them like that. And especially it's worse when the person is murdered, I'm talking about, older people who die of natural causes or old age or something like that. But Joel was murdered right in front of Ellie.
Brutally, viciously.
Yeah, brutally, viciously. So that's not something that's going to go away.
Intentionally.
Right.
That usually I'm not like a big fan of splicing older scenes in to like remind the audience of things that like happened previously, but this was a time where I felt it was really appropriate because this person is experiencing really intense PTSD, and right now in this moment is like the most fresh. Like I assume that's like the first moment that Ellie first wakes up from being unconscious, like from that moment. They would still be right there. They just living that over and over. That is when that wound is open, it is bleeding, and they are not having a good time.
This is something that I feel that if I always, well, not always, but when I heard that there were changes in this episode, I figured there would be a time jump. And of course, I was right. And I was worried about that because I said, man, we're going to miss Ellie's initial reaction, the trauma, but we don't. I was so glad that we got that for a little bit before the time jump. So It feels weird to say that was nice to see because obviously it's horrible, but it was nice to see.
It's important for the character and their motivations moving forward.
You gotta have the knowledge that they're dealing with something like that.
I think it also makes sense that there would be some form of time jump. It is funny when you look back at the game and things do kind of just pick up very, very quickly because it has to, But I think when you look at it just from a reality standpoint, it's like there would be some time in between.
You gotta have time to heal.
And I again, we'll talk about it when we get to it, but I love how there are numerous practical reasons, and I think that's something that now I don't really feel it's necessary, but I do appreciate when it's done. Clearly, it's happened in season 1, and now it happens in season 2. If there's a way for Craig and Neil to make it more realistic, they will. A lot of things in the game, they have some gamey moments. I think Last of Us is a very not gamey game, but at the end of the day, it is a game. So there are still a few of those quote unquote gamey moments. So it seems like Neil is using this opportunity, as is Craig, to change those gamey moments to make something more realistic. However, when it comes to something like the song, we've talked about Pearl Jam on the show before, but we don't even need to talk about that yet, because even the songs from the dance, the Crooked Stills songs, those songs came out in 2006, and the apocalypse was supposed to happen in 2003, but they don't care because those songs are important to the story and they're important to the scene. So I like the give and take, like Tyler said before, because when you have a change that makes sense for realism, they could do that. But then if something is important and realism would get in the way of that, they say fuck the realism, which I think is the smart move and the right one for a something where the story is so deep and tied to certain elements, like that. Right. Trying to dance around a little bit with some spoilers, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Before we leave this opening hospital scene, I know it's probably impossible for them to include it, but I kind of wish we could have lingered on before we get to Ellie, just the chaos of an operating hospital during the zombie apocalypse.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I think it's more realistic that we just kind of brush past it and get back to our main character and I understand pacing and time and stuff like that. But it's so cool. I kind of wish we could have
concept to think about,
What if someone got in there that was accidentally bit and they missed it, and there's a lot of stakes there that just a little maybe missed opportunity, but
sounds
it's not
a
real criticism.
You're cooking up a CW show right there.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know what it reminds me of? Not to go off on a tangent, but it reminds me of whenever the MCU does moments where they show when everybody comes back into existence or whatever. They do a very similar thing where I forget what, I think it's in WandaVision where they show a hospital where somebody comes back and it's just what the fuck?
Right.
It's moments or in Hawkeye when Florence Pugh comes back in someone's apartment and it's just what the fuck? It's stuff like that's cool to see.
Whereas in the Spider-Man, it was played off as kind of a gag.
Right.
Those two, it was genuinely what is happening?
Yeah.
This is scary. One minute,
about all the people
Rambo's holding her mom's hand. The next second, she's gone or whatever.
Imagine if you were surfing or swimming or something.
I was saying, what if you were? What if you were on a plane?
Yeah. Right. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
Crazy.
You just come back falling from the sky.
Yeah, and we even see it. They show in Endgame helicopters crash because the pilots got snapped out.
Yeah.
So when they were brought back, where'd the pilot go? The helicopter crashed. I don't know.
Dead is where he went. They hit the ground.
Yeah.
Oh God. That's thinking too much into something.
Thanos, that bastard.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up this tangent, but that's just what it makes me think of.
Right.
No, it's that is a good comparison. But then we get the 3-month time jump. And this time jump, to me, shows why they did the Horde. Because one could argue that without the Horde, there's not much reason to have a time jump. And I think Craig and Neil wanted to have a time jump to let the show slow down a bit. Everybody, could gather their emotions in universe and out of universe and build up to what's coming. Because Austin and I talked about this a little bit, but going forward, starting next week and on, it should be bang, 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 bang. Just just crazy Seattle stuff.
It also, it gives Abby and her crew time to get back to where they are too, because that is one thing The Last of Us as a game kind of ignores, how like the United States is clearly just like truncated, so our protagonist can get from A to B.
They took the bullet train.
Right. So it makes sense to have a time jump where it's like, okay, the people that just wronged Ellie, you can have them have the time to get back to where they came from. And, yeah.
Right. But I was critical and saying that the Horde, while really cool and a big action sequence, I did think that it was kind of filler. But it's a lot less filler now because it justified its existence, which is what I was talking about at the beginning of this stream. And I'm sure we'll get even more of that. So, again, I always preach this in general, but it's why I am never a fan of judging something until it's done.
Yep.
Because we don't know how things are going to come back, If we judged The Last of Us Part 2 halfway in, we would probably all have different opinions than what we think now. Right. So I do think that's important to let something finish and see. It's okay. Obviously, we do this show. We'll talk about our initial reactions. But I do think this proves...
stick by what I said about the Horde. I understand its positioning in this story and, making the town of Jackson want to be a little bit more hesitant on... what am I trying to say? Hold back from helping Ellie, but because of the time jump, I feel like it reaffirms some of the things I was saying about the Horde. Whereas, okay, if the time jump was like a week, maybe 2, and Jackson's still like a little bit more like on fire or something, it would feel a lot more pressing that like Ellie was like, we need to get like some people together. And the pulling back of people, they're like, no, we got to fucking pick up this mess. Whereas this 3-month time jump and maybe the framing of them rebuilding Jackson and how Jackson looks, it's like beautiful broad daylight. Everyone's kind of pulling their weight. And there was one shot of like the saw where I was like, that looks like a Home Depot commercial. Yeah. I'm not trying to be like super nitpicky or nothing like that. I'm more on the side of, I understand like what the Horde represents and what its purpose is here to make people hesitant to help Ellie. But I do think it is a little bit of both for me still, whereas maybe there could have been a different way to hold people back from going to Jackson or going to Seattle. But I'm not a writer, so
that's fair.
And I'm still talking to people that are show-only viewers that loved every single second of that Horde, and it's crazy. It's so crazy.
I do think it's a lot of, is Tommy gonna die? Is Marie gonna die? And most game players are like, nah, they ain't. So
that's kind of the thing is I know no one's gonna go to Seattle with Ellie other than Dina. So some of I enjoy the council scene. I love all the additions and making Jackson feel a little bit more like a community and a family and all that. But in the back of my head, I do know that at the end of the day, these two characters are going to go and no one else is.
Right, and that is something that I agree with you. I did feel I took some notes about that for the council scene when we get to that, but I did feel that this is a waste of time for someone who has played the game because we know they're not going to agree with Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like you said last week, it's hard, right?
Like a lot. I really enjoyed the pacing of this episode and the world building they did. It's just I'm trying to acknowledge both sides of my brain. This is a show and this is a game adaptation.
For sure.
Sorry to derail a little bit.
No, you're good.
Yeah, my sister actually texted me. She caught up last week, and she texted me after she watched the second episode, and she was the Horde. She was like, "Holy shit!" Like I was just so anxious watching that whole thing.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, that I think is what they're shooting for.
Yeah.
That might be just something that's not for us, and I always hesitate to say that because I think that something that's really, really good should be for everybody. But I also understand that there has to be some sort of balancing act for
like
the people.
Tommy scene. That was really rewarding to watch as both show
exactly.
and a fan of the game. Like so they it's a balancing on a knife.
Yeah. I did read an interview with Craig Mazin where he was asked why kill off Joel now and not, end of season 2, beginning of season 3. Just give Joel and Ellie more adventures. And he said a bunch of things, but something that stuck out to me is he said that he knew that game players were expecting it, and he didn't want us, people like us, to feel like he was yanking us around. Which I appreciate
answer,
that.
Yeah, that's a great answer, but his answer should have been because that's when it happens in the game.
Right.
Yeah,
because like Neil always says in interviews, it's like this is where the story starts.
Yes,
because that's
exactly.
the story, is him dying there.
Right. I'm sure, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, but if anyone has ever talked to you about what's the Last of Us Part 2 about? And I'm like, I can't really tell you because you can't talk about this game without talking about Joel's death. And I think that's why a lot of people, who haven't even played the game, know about this. That's why I was so happy that my parents didn't. But like I said, my brother knew. I know Justin from Out of the Basement knew. So just something like that is hard to avoid.
It's so unfortunate.
Yes, for sure. But I'm glad that there are, of course, a bunch of people. I don't know if you guys have seen any reactions online, but there are a bunch of people that are just, devastated, did not know anything. So that's always cool to see. But
I saw a meme, and I'm kind of rephrasing it, but we got a cameo in that 3-month little rebuild montage. We got to see Abby's arms on Jesse.
Oh my god!
It's so funny that you say that because when I was watching it, I out loud went, "Damn, bro's yoked."
Yeah, same. I was like,
he totally is.
He's chopping wood, bro. He's going to work.
Tommy gives him the hammer. He's like, "You got it.
You got soft hands, boy."
Yeah. I'll give Jesse some wood to chop. I mean.
Yeah. Hey, yo.
Actually, really unrealistic that Jesse's arms would look like that. And
100%.
They shouldn't be bulking up like that, bro. There's no creatine out there.
Exactly. But then, after the time jump, the first scene we see is Ellie in the hospital. She's ready to leave, but she sees Gale. And first, I am surprised at the amount of time Catherine O'Hara is in this show. I thought she was going to be a one and done.
I'm so curious as to what the angle is, because clearly she's very important to this season and this story. Clearly, because they're really making an effort to put her in there, and I love her, so it's awesome. But it's very interesting.
Every time she's on screen, my reaction is, "I don't know why you're here, but all right."
I am not upset.
Yeah, it's fun. I just don't know why you are here.
Yeah, I think
Seattle.
Harpo spitting for sure.
Bro, I wouldn't be surprised. She's just a really pivotal scene, and then there she is. She's like, "Oh, actually,"
because she's connected to every character.
Yep.
Like every character goes to her, talks to her at some point or another. So it's very interesting. I mean, clearly they're going to do something with Eugene and Joel. Like,
Right.
clearly that's what they're getting to. But it's just, I don't know. I find it very interesting every time she's on screen.
Obviously, we'll see less of her now that we're in Seattle. But I'm sure that's not the last.
That's what you think, man. She might be.
Yeah, she's
every
actually.
time they do something important, she's gonna be there.
Yeah, she's actually
have a
on
moment
the.
every episode where she like has a flashback.
Like,
No.
all
I
right,
think that she just took a horse, and she's just behind them with binoculars, like
yeah,
Right.
she's like
the whole
like
rest of
watching
the
Michael
show.
in the woods, just like don't do that.
Yeah. But I love that scene so much. Again, praising Bella Ramsey's acting, but you really see that Ellie just doesn't give a fuck about talking to Gale. She's saying whatever she knows that she has to say to leave. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't believe a word she says in that scene.
No,
I don't think you're supposed to either.
No, because
Right.
it follows her immediately going to the house. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely loved everything about this though. Like it's just like some charm and just whimsical fun.
And that felt very Ellie. You know, that's one of those moments where it's like this really is Ellie.
Yeah.
You know, if you know the character and you know the game, like this is exactly. It feels like an interaction she would have had with maybe say Marlene or someone. You know.
Yeah.
Wait, Tyler, are you saying that Bella Ramsey is doing a good job portraying Game Ellie?
No.
I definitely am.
Hell yeah. But the line that stuck out to me is when Ellie says, I should have talked to him, but I didn't. And I'm just sitting there like, you sure about that, Ellie?
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's a scene in last week's episode, episode 2, where since we do this on Tuesday, it's hard to say what's last week, what's this week. But there's a scene from episode 2 where Ellie says, you know, I'm still me, Joel's still Joel, and that's the way it is, and we're good. It's not everything is as it seems. And yet, we're shown that the last time that they talked, they fought. So, I'm going to assume that that's not actually the last time they talked. I would bet that Ellie is lying when she says that I should have talked to him, but I didn't. I think she did.
Yeah, she doesn't want to give Gale the final details of their conversation. It's still, if there is a conversation, it clearly would be personal to her to know and no one else to have to hear it. And
when she says, again, I wrote it down, she says, your final moment with someone doesn't define your whole time with them. Mm-hmm. I think it does. And I think that moment is yet to be seen. Craig Mazin brought up a good point, which I didn't even think of when I watched the episode. But he said that you could also read that line as the last time she saw Joel was actually his death.
Yep.
And that drives everything going forward, because even if I'm wrong and that she never talked to Joel again, clearly she has regrets about how this went down. So, of course, that's going to be a driving force going forward in her wanting to kill all of them, not just Abby.
So, and, you know, even in her final moment seeing Joel, she did like crawl like over to him, you know, like clearly, like, even though they've been fighting, there's still some underlying like love there, you know, from what we've seen. I also think Gale is. It's interesting how much time they are giving her, because I do think she's also talking about like herself maybe a little bit, and the final moments, because she seems really hung up on Joel's final moment with her, and her asking him, "What did you do?" And he said, "I saved her," but that's not harming someone. We'll talk about it a little bit more during the baseball scene, but she's clearly on to something there.
She's angling for something.
And yet Ellie's not giving her anything.
Oh.
That's what makes her so interesting, because like I don't know what she's like. Why? Well, I
Right.
thought it was
What's
just going
her
to
name?
be the one scene, with Joel, and they
it's-
would have their talk and then move on, and she would never appear again. But like every time,
It's giving me Frank vibes because of course Frank is technically a character in the game, but not really. He's a corpse.
Yeah.
But Gale is a character not even mentioned in the game, completely show original. And even though, of course, I'm obviously more invested in what's going on with Ellie and Dina and Tommy and Joel, I'm really loving the stuff with Gale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did not expect that. When I saw that she was cast, and then when I saw the first episode, I was like, oh, that's a cool role for Catherine O'Hara. I'm glad that they did that. And that'll be it. Then she showed up again. And then again now. So
it's a nice little side plot.
Right. And then even after that, I was so convinced when Ellie walked out, I'm like, oh,
Okay.
we'll never see
That's
Gale
it.
again. And then we see her again later this episode. So but
Is
I'm
she
never
going-
disappointed. I'm surprised, but they just keep adding stuff to her character, and I think it's a lot of fun to see because
I think they added her as kind of. We'll get to it during the second scene with her, but
Mhm.
she is an external thing that our characters can talk to allow them to naturally exposit their deeper feelings to the audience. Gale is maybe an audience stand-in a little bit.
Thought about that. It could be she's just a device to get that inner monologue out.
Yeah.
Yes. I just feel like, it just seems like by the time this series is over, she will have interacted with every major character.
And I don't want to reduce her to that, but like
She gets Abby on the phone. She's like, "Hey,
I mean, at this
what's
point,
going on, bro?
hey, she's going to write her a letter. Like, hey, I need to know what you were thinking.
The Last of Us has never really had because it's heavily implied that obviously she's a drunk and she's kind of all over the place. The Last of Us has never really had a character that's really like that.
Mhm.
It also
Yeah.
kind of builds lore out of I'm a therapist and she provides her services for whatever. It's very lore building and world building.
right.
Yeah.
But as you said, Austin, we'll talk more about Gale when we get to the other scenes.
I really want to echo what Tyler was saying about Bella's performance as Ellie in this scene. The sarcasm was just on point. The knowing how to maneuver this mature social situation. I guess I'll have to reflect, or I feel really bad that I never had a moment with him. I guess I should forgive myself or let myself off the hook for that. Oh, wow.
That's perfect. That
Right.
was
Yeah.
That was so much younger, sarcastic Ellie.
It's like T Max said, just very Ellie. That's just Ellie. It's perfect. I love it. But then obviously she walks out.
Oh,
Gale's just like whatever.
Yeah.
And even that little moment again, I love with Gale. But we do go to the next scene, which is
the one shot of her walking down and the mask falls.
Yep. I love that because again, it bleeds right into the next scene of Joel's house because no one's there. And Ellie gets to be real, true Ellie. When the mask is always up, now there's no one there for the mask to be up. And it's very, very similar to the game, but it's heartbreaking because as we talked about earlier in the episode, we see all of the flowers in the mailbox and in front of Joel's house. And we see Ellie walk through the house and all these little things, we see Joel's watch that Sarah gave him. We see his gun, which Ellie takes. But I'm sure the moment that everybody is the Joel's jacket. And
even got my dad, bro. Even got my dad.
That's so heartbreaking because I'm sure anyone who's lost somebody knows that
Uh-oh.
Knows what? Knows what?
Oh, the Disney internet let him down?
That's too bad. Yeah, the jacket. Is he back? Was that you, Tyler?
No, that was me. And the tears like coming
There he is.
down, and you
Oh,
can just
back.
like see him. And all right,
We
Am I
panicked.
good?
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. The internet disconnected for a second.
House of the Mouse, bro. Can't trust it.
Yeah, what the hell?
Someone's,
Bob
someone's
Iger, what are you
screaming
doing?
a room over.
But shit, I lost my train of thought. What the hell was I saying now?
The
When
jacket.
someone's
Oh,
lost
Yeah,
someone.
the jacket.
Yes, your sense of smell is so intrinsically tied to memory. And I feel like, just going in to the jacket, very similar to the game, of course, it's just sad. People have talked about comparisons to Brokeback Mountain. And I could see that. But I think that in that scene, when Ellie starts to cry, you see that even 3 months later, this has broken her. There is no, getting over it. She's just done. So when Dina then shows up, I love the little bit of Ellie just wiping her tears away,
Yep.
making
Been
sure
there.
that she's fine.
Putting the mask back on.
Right, because I wasn't really expecting this, but again, this is what the time jump does, is Ellie isn't really comfortable around Dina fully, not like she is around Joel anyway. She just still has that mask up for Dina. And this is something that it's a very interesting change. I don't dislike it, but I didn't expect it, because in the game, you almost feel like Ellie has always trusted Dina and been infatuated with her, so she never has to build the relationship. It's just there. And of course, that's credit to how they write Dina, and Dina's an amazing character in the game, and of course she is in the show as well. But I like that they're not just jumping in head first. They are building it, and I think that's really cool to see. Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
This new dynamic with the relationship.
Yeah.
I really loved the cinematography of that scene with Ellie holding the jacket, and just how it kind of translates into a relationship with Dina, because we're not there, but we are, and because of how it's shot and how like ugly and gross and like just crying she is. Gross and ugly might not be like the correct terminology, but we're like right there. We're like in Ellie's face.
Mhm.
We are right there with her grieving, and then it pulls back, and when Dina comes in, because gotta hold people at arm's length. Weird little side note. So I do, for those who don't know, which I'm sure everyone knows, I do a little bit of toy photography as a hobby.
A little bit, Mr. Mouse.
And
over here.
one of the things that I do for lighting is there's the stuff you can get called atmosphere in a can, and you spray it to really get like that cinematic, those beams of light. And every time in a scene like the jacket scene where you see those beams, I'm like looking at the smoke or the fog, the dust coming up. I'm like, oh, I know there was some crew member sitting there like.
There's also one little scene that we skipped too. When she walks in the house, she looks in the one room that it looks like maybe Joel was making a room for her or something like that. Is that what that's implied?
I took it the other way, as that
Yeah,
was
same.
the room that she left when she put her bed in the
the
garage.
mattress.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, she started
Yeah.
out.
I got
And,
okay.
and
Yeah, because it is kind of like torn up. It seems. Yeah.
right, and I took it as that's some regret that again she's obviously she didn't know at the time, but in the final part
Maybe if
of
I hadn't
Joel's
moved
life,
out, I could have seen him, in the mornings at least.
right,
once.
exactly,
It's just your typical. You start thinking about all these things. Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Very natural.
of course.
And Joel left it untouched the way that she just left it.
Yep.
You know.
The
What a
way
teddy
that
bear.
a parent would do, like, if you've moved or their child has died or something.
Oh, guys, I'm about to get choked up. This shit's sad as fuck, man.
I love what the show and the game does for Joel, because I have seen some people say that they don't like how the show, and again the game, frames Joel as a villain at this point in the story, and I strongly disagree with that. I don't think that's the case, because there are no villains here. That's kind of the point.
Everyone's the hero of their own story.
Right. Everybody is they're trying to get by. And I feel that even though we've seen Joel do horrible, reprehensible things, we also have seen him care so much, not just for Ellie, but for the whole community, for his brother. And he is a good person. And he's also a bad person, because in real life, with maybe a few exceptions, most people are not just one thing. Good people do bad things all the time, and bad people do good things as well. So
I hate to sound like pretentious, but like, if you think he's being painted as the villain, you're kind of missing it from the jump. Like, I don't think that's the intention at all.
Yeah,
right out the creator's mouth, Neil has said, like, I love Joel more than anybody.
Yeah,
like,
and some people think he hates Joel, which is crazy.
Right.
I mean, clearly.
Yeah. But I do think that, just like Austin was saying, it does make you get emotional, because we love Joel. Of course we love Joel, even though we could understand and we don't, we don't love the horrible things he did. He's more than that. And I think that is the overall message of The Last of Us, and why I love it so much. But anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. We get back to the house, and Joel's house, and Dina comes in, and I love this conversation with that Dina and Ellie have, because again,
she knows how to push those buttons.
Yeah,
100%.
That's something that I loved this whole episode, Austin. You really see that. I don't want to say foiled. It's not necessarily Dina's a foil to Ellie.
No, she absolutely.
She compliments her so much. There are so many times where Ellie does this, and Dina's like, "Sure, but also let me help you with that." And Ellie probably wouldn't get very far without Dina in this scenario.
If you weren't sold on her as Dina, or just Dina as a character, like I don't know how you could be.
If you're not sold,
this conversation should solidify it.
If you're not
made her
sold
cookies,
with,
bro.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like,
if you are not sold by Isabella Merced as Dina, then
just log off.
Good night, Irene.
Yeah.
My coworker loves the game, but she hates Dina in the game.
No,
but she loves her in the show. She's they have fixed like all the things I did not like about her in the game so far, like in the show. So that's she's really awesome in the show.
Can you say what she
does?
I'll
get into it later.
Okay. But that is interesting to me, because I feel like Dina is a very well liked character.
A plot device is what. Essentially she says she's not really a character; she's a plot device.
I can understand, but I think in the show they are taking steps.
Yes,
they're giving her more to do, and she already has a lot to do, but they're giving her more to do now, even before we get that.
That's just like a trend among pretty much every character, which is great that it's a TV adaptation, because there's just, you just can't do that for every character, just about. So
for sure. Before we continue, I do want to talk about Psycho's comments, because I do think that a lot of writers will say that, of course, they put some of themselves into their work. How could you not? Right. I don't even know if it's possible to separate yourself. Even if you try, of course, parts of you are going to be in your work because you're writing it.
Neil wrote Jill like...
Yeah, exactly. So I know, I think it was you, T-Mac, right, who said that? I have seen interviews where he's talked about how much he loves Joel, and he gets offended when people say that he hates Joel. Because he's like, no, fuck you. Of course I don't. I don't understand. And how could anyone think that? I don't know. If I don't imagine
killed him in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
I don't imagine there are many people on this planet who love Joel more than Neil Druckmann. So
I do.
Yeah, there you go. But we again, this is a very tangent-heavy episode, just by the nature of the episode, I think.
Yeah.
But we go and Dina is talking to Ellie at the table, and this conversation is similar to a conversation that's in the game between Ellie and Tommy, because of course, as we've talked about before, in the game, Tommy is the one who's on patrol with Joel when he dies, not Dina. So this conversation is similar, and then Maria has a conversation with Ellie in the game that is also reminiscent of this conversation. But I just love how in this version of this story that Dina is the one to tell Ellie all this. And again, I think that is why they did the patrol change. And that's something that we've talked about on this show before, about how they switched the patrol. And I think, again, I know I said this like 3 or 4 times this episode, but it justifies that change. And that's something that I think it's important to do, because if they're going to change something, people like us who are very protective of the game want to know why. And this scene specifically, and also some later scenes in the episode with Dina, I was like, okay, this is why. And the line specifically that I really, really loved is when Dina says, I loved him too, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think Last of Us is very good at show, not tell. But we kind of are told that Dina and Ellie have a good relationship in the game. We're not really shown that. So the show has done a great job, I think, in showing that Dina and Ellie have had a good
to actually have on-screen chemistry and dialogue.
And Isabella Merced just has great chemistry with everybody. Yeah. She's amazing.
Yeah. Would you say that she's magnetic?
Yeah, captivating.
Captivating?
Magnetic.
Yeah. But
magnetic.
It's true. It's true. I can't lie. But I do think that having her break all this down to Ellie, and even the way she says it, I didn't write this down, but she says something like, the cookies are a peace offering because what I'm about to say makes you mad. It's going to make you mad.
Yeah, it's gonna,
and then the body language.
Yeah.
Bella, kind of recoiling a little bit. We're about to fight.
Right. And Bella, I just love how Ellie acts in this scene, because she's actually pissed at Dina. She's like, fuck you. You made them get away. And Dina
knows how to fight back to that.
But you see, I love it. Dina has a little kind of about to get angry moment. And Isabel Merced's acting is so good in this scene. But
she knows she's got her the whole way. She
calms down. And I wrote this line. She said, it occurred to me that if you want to find someone and the only thing you know about them is where they're going to end up, maybe let them get there. And again, that to me just justifies part of the time jump, because we see at the end of the last episode, they're walking back to Seattle. That's going to take a while.
Right.
And Jackson has horses. Mm-hmm. It just wouldn't make sense.
They could have run them down on a trail.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not addressed in the game. I don't think, right? So
they teleport.
Yeah, we just gotta assume.
DHL, Doctor Strange shipping.
Yeah, they just got out of there.
They're like, all right, let's get out of here.
I'm gonna assume.
And that was one of my notes. Jumping ahead just a little bit. It's on topic, I promise. But it was a course correction that they made from the game. Because it's a show, they could have a montage of them traveling the country.
Yeah.
Time jump. So I get it. I like why they did the time jump.
But I think also you look back on shows like Game of Thrones in the last
that's what I was going to say.
Seasons when people were kind of just bopping all over the place, and they probably think, we probably should not do that.
It also is the season 1 of The Last of Us, and by extension, part 1 of the game. Yeah, exactly. It's a road trip about getting from Boston to Salt Lake City. And that's the entire story is essentially just them getting from point A to point B. Then in Last of Us Part 2, because of the nature of the story, you see now Abby and her group have traveled 600 miles from Seattle to Jackson and back. And now Ellie and Dina are traveling from Jackson all the way to Seattle. So like Austin said, having that montage, I think really does add something. When also, in the game, it's like, nope, here they are. They're in Seattle.
Fair, in the first game, they weren't immediately going to Boston.
True.
It was a lot of like side quests because they were like, oh, let's look for the fireflies here. Okay, they're not there. Let's go to Tommy. Tommy's over here. Okay, Tommy said go here. Let's go there. Okay,
and people do forget, but in the game, when Henry kills himself, there's a cut to black, and they're outside Jackson.
Yep.
Pittsburgh to Jackson, that's a sizable journey.
It's a long time.
And that's not shown in the game.
One thing obviously they do in the show, game,
it's Kansas City, but
whenever there's any sort of time jump where they got from place to place quick, their clothes are always different when they cut to like whatever the new place is. That's like a funny little indicator. It's like, oh, they got new clothes.
Right.
So it's like in Vikings where every time they would change the time that they wouldn't tell you, there would just be snow on the ground. Like, it's snowing now, right. So it's winter, and you were just in spring. Like, oh shit, okay.
All right.
My favorite part about this entire conversation, which you might be about to bring up, is just like after she knows that Dina is correct and hits her with that line, it's just the subtle like slide the cookies over to her like that.
Yep.
Like, all right.
And damn, bro, those cookies looked pretty good. I don't know. Also, I don't know what they got to do in the apocalypse, but I was like, they look pretty good to me.
Listen, if Dina's
an excellent baker, if they're looking like that,
I already know what you're gonna say, Zoo. I already know.
What are we?
If Dina's making me cookies, they can taste like garbage. I'm gobbling those shit up.
The second I watched this scene, I was like, Zoo's gonna make some funny joke about this shit tomorrow.
Bro,
I know it.
She can make Zoo cookies all day.
It's the soup Aragorn eats.
Right.
I just it's so funny because Dina isn't even my favorite character. I don't even think Dina's in my top 3 Last of Us characters.
There we go.
I don't believe you, bro.
But I just love her.
It's the levity. It's the levity. She brings a sense of fun and levity to any scene, and she does it in the game too. But I feel like they kind of perfected it in the show, where it's like
much better.
Every time she's on screen, like you kind of just can't take your eyes off her because she's just fun.
Yeah, exactly. She's magnetic.
Brings you into her orbit.
Exactly. 100%. But do you guys have anything to say about that scene?
Yeah, Dina's a pretty good artist. Whipped up that little wolf logo. I wonder if she had been practicing, because that's kind of crazy. You see something once before getting knocked unconscious,
and you draw it 3 months later, like perfectly. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Bro, she's a jack of all trades, man. She's just every episode she's gonna invent something like, I can just do this too.
Color me impressed.
Yeah.
What can't Dina do?
Like, you need to do XYZ. I got you.
And I do like this characterization with Abby, where in Ellie's head it's always like, oh, the girl with the braid. I've always liked that imagery because that's in the game too, and I like that as like a little descriptor, especially for a character like in the game is so built and everything. But it's like that's a better descriptor than the being built thing to me. You know, like there's something about that.
That ponytail is iconic.
Yeah,
it is.
Speaking of Dina, is she going to be like the walking workbench whenever they need to make an upgrade or something?
Right.
Like in the show, it's like, hey, Dina, you think you can lift something up real quick?
Yeah. We can talk about that again more with a future scene. But I do like as well that when she's talking about the wolves, we get some backstory with Eugene again. And that's some fun stuff where we see that the wolves just they had, some run-ins with the Fireflies, and we know that some Fireflies are part of there. We don't exactly know, just from this little tidbit that Dina brings up about Eugene. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Again, like we've talked about with Gale, they're clearly building towards something with Eugene and Joel and Gale. So that's going to be fun to see whenever that happens. Because again, as we've talked about here before, that is a show original thing. So none of us know where that's going. So whenever we do see that, I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun for us. But if we're done talking about that scene, then we can talk about we're introduced to a completely new group of characters. And we talked about this in the pre-show, but I don't think we'll say what this group is called because they don't say it in the show. I did?
Yeah, because they go immediately to Tommy right after the house.
Yeah, bro.
Oh, that's right. I don't have that written down.
My God.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. All right. Austin should just run this. I'm done.
Wait. One more thing.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Austin. I have no notes on this scene, so you can take control for this one.
Yeah. So the next scene is, I love the way it's edited together, mostly because we get all this exposition from Dina for telling Ellie the names, the locations, the logo, all that, and then it hard cuts to Ellie and Dina at like the stable with Tommy, and it's just opens with the question, so what do you think? And it's implied that they just filled Tommy in on all of the information that Dina had just given to Ellie. And he's kind of like in this spot where he's like, what do you want me to do with this?
Right.
And Ellie's kind of taken aback by this. She wants to obviously go get him. Let's get some people together. Let's go. But Tommy is in this position where he is married to like the head of this town, or one of the heads of this town in Maria. And he's also got a kid, and he's got a lot of ties in Jackson. It was just hit by the Horde. There's a lot of rebuilding going on. So he's not in this position to go gung-ho with her. And when Ellie kind of spits back at this, Tommy has this line that I just absolutely loved, where he goes, don't talk to me like I didn't know him. And that just, it cut through me.
Yeah. He was my brother.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I forgot. I did talk about this a little bit because when I was talking about the previous Tommy scene, I love that line because you see again how it's not just Ellie. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have lost Joel, but specifically Tommy.
Yeah.
And even
he's so forgotten about in this whole thing.
Right. In the show, it's a little different than the game. It honestly makes it more heartbreaking because in the game in part 1, Joel says something like, I believe the last words he said is, I never want to see your goddamn face again. We don't get that in the show. In the show, their relationship, it's not 100% great, but it's not as broken down, I think, as it is in the game. By
comparison, these are like best freaking buds.
Right. And I love that scene. It honestly makes me tear up just even before all that happened. Yeah. You just see that both Joel and Tommy just
getting goosebumps. I have my brothers, I enjoy my brotherly love,
If you have a brother, and you're close, like they are in the show, it's just, it hits you harder too. Cause
exactly.
I'd be pissed too, but there's only so much I can do currently. So
yeah, for sure. And I again, gotta give this to Vic because Gabriel Luna is just fantastic as Tommy.
He may be awesome. Like my favorite casting. Like Forgon, you said that at the beginning of us doing this, and just every week I'm like, damn, Forgon was kind of spitting.
I'm just like, bro, what are we gonna get? Just Tommy only. Tommy only.
Tommy episode.
Tommy.
Yeah. I think again, I'm pretty sure I've said this in the show before, but Tommy, I think, is the one character that I like even more than I did in the game.
Yeah, I love this like want to be hero kind of backstory that they really expanded on in the show. Because why would he want to leave Jackson? You know, he's the noble man. He wants to stand by his family, and Joel was the murderous let's go get revenge guy, but Joel's dead. There's nothing to be done.
Do you guys believe Tommy in this scene?
No.
Where he says when he says that Joel wouldn't go, because I think Joel would.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I think Tommy knows Joel would go. Joel knows. Just no.
I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but in our favorite character, Gale, in the later baseball scene, I have some more Tommy things to say that I'll save for that.
Okay.
And that's why I don't believe him.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like when you're sitting there like saying something out loud to somebody, trying to convince yourself, kind of a thing. Like, if I just say it, I'll believe it, but you don't.
It's just the way that he delivered that line. Don't talk to me like you did, like I didn't know.
That was so
good,
man.
And the look in his eye.
Yeah.
And it's
just like the simple, like, are you going to have our back? It's like, of course. Yeah, of course.
I actually don't have this scene. I really shouldn't do this, because the way I write my notes is if I don't have anything to say about the scene, I don't write it down. But that's actually not good, because what if you guys have something to say about that?
Hey, bro, we forgive you. You're on vacation.
Yeah, bro, you got to think about us first.
Yeah, exactly. Next time I won't do that. But I don't remember exactly where this scene is. Hopefully, Austin, since I know you have notes that you wrote this down specifically. But when Jesse talks to Ellie,
that's
before. Okay, yeah. So,
brother, I write it scene by scene down.
That's after where you.
I write it.
I don't have something to say about it, just to like bring it up on the off chance.
Yeah,
Tyler or Jacob might have something to say about it, just to like, hey, you want to touch on it? But don't worry, I got you.
That reminds me, I didn't actually address it before the stream, but Jacob is working tonight, so he will be back.
Bad host. Bad host.
He is busy, unfortunately.
I want to go timestamp by timestamp when we do the show. All right,
there you go.
Jacob, if you watch the replay, comment the avocado or something.
There you go. But are we good on that scene now?
Yeah. Okay. At least I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So the next scene is we are introduced to a new group, and I won't say what the group is because it wasn't revealed in the show, even though it was revealed in other media. After the show things. But the first thing
I can't believe it when you told me that.
Yeah,
I'm blown away.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
And the thing is, we've talked about this. That's not the first time they've done that either. So
chat, replay gang, don't watch those after the episode things. Yeah. That boy Craig is going to like spoil the end of this.
And if you're watching it, stop watching it.
My dad, my mom loves to watch it, and then my dad is like, they're telling me how I should feel, but I already know. Like, I'm not an idiot.
Right. That's why I don't watch them. And then when he told me
as soon as he said that, I'm like, that's like my friend Austin. He feels
it's crazy how much those kind of add to the runtime, because there was a point where I was like, oh, I have like 10 minutes left, and then the episode just ended.
Yeah,
because I guess there was like credits and the after thing, and I was like, damn, I thought I had like a little more to go.
Dude,
and then there's also
like 20 minutes of credits.
As soon as credits roll, I'll turn it off. I don't even stick around. I don't even want to see the next week thing. I don't even care.
Okay, so that's an important thing. Have you guys seen the next week thing?
I did watch.
I don't watch it for.
I did watch this one. I did.
Okay, well, I don't.
My homework.
There is something. I guess I don't want to spoil it for you, Dr. Forgan, so I don't think we will. But
I mean, I think we all know. The four of us know what's coming. It's fine.
But I don't think you do, because there was something that we're showing that was like not game thing. So I won't. I think we won't talk about that because people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's
I know
interesting.
I know what you're talking about. I
Oh,
know
it's the
It's
exactly
the very
what
last thing. The very last thing we see.
This was weird. So when I was doing my notes, I like to look up like who the directors and who wrote on the episode and stuff.
Mhm.
When I looked up
Smart.
the title of this episode, or whenever I looked up like that stuff about this episode, the title of episode 6 came up. I don't know if it's like last week where it was like an AI thing, but
Yes, it's.
Zugor, you were telling me something like leaked or something.
I
but-
think those things were like, there are no leaks as in story leaks about this. At least maybe they are, but I haven't seen them.
right.
But the leaks are more just like people who have reviewed it, who then just talk about some things. To my
Okay.
knowledge, there are titles out there. I don't think they're true. I think
Okay.
that's all. What someone found, I saw this on Reddit, is that some clearly AI written article said that these are the titles of the episode, but someone found the source of where those titles came from. They were a random Reddit post of someone saying, "This is my opinion of what I think the episodes could be called."
Oh, okay.
Sounds like AI for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't know if that's the same one that you saw.
I
But
just
there-
saw it and I kind
yeah.
of made a note of it and then I moved on.
Yeah, I think I don't think any of the titles were revealed because I don't remember what you said last week, but whatever you said, that wound up not being the
it was
episode.
wrong. And I
Yeah.
like prefaced, I was like, this might just be like
Yeah.
bullshit.
Nah, Austin just falls for AI all the time. That's what it is.
I don't know if y'all want to know, but the director for next week is kind of exciting.
Yeah, I mean, let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is Kate Herron who did all of the first season of Loki, and I love Loki.
Mhm. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I know Neil Druckmann did episode 6.
Interesting.
And that's how we know that's when we'll see Eugene, because he talked about
Man.
directing Joe Pantoliano.
It's
So-
worth noting also the guy that did this episode, Peter, I guess his last name is Hoare or Hauer. I
Yep.
don't know how you say that. He did the episode with Bill and Frank last year or 2 years
Yes.
ago. So
He also worked on Daredevil, Netflix.
cool.
I don't know which episodes he specifically did, but when I saw that, I went, ooh, we're cooking. He did it again.
Dude.
Don't even. I can't. Just
Oh,
Dude, that was
that's-
crazy. Holy
That's
shit.
the best zoo lore there is, bro.
I've been so sniffly this whole time. I keep moving my mic up because I don't want y'all to hear me like sniffling.
That's the best zoo lore yet.
I can't. That's see. Look at Austin actually fucking muting his mic and camera. Bro, first of all, I didn't even bring my mouse to Disney, so I got to use the stupid fucking laptop
The
key.
pad.
Trackpad?
Yeah, it's.
Like a normal human?
Oh god. All right. Anyway, we see this group of people, and they are very different from any other group we've seen. Clearly, there's some religious element there. There's a child, and my first thought, and I know Austin will will agree with this when he gets back, but my first thought was, why now? Why are they revealing this group this early? Because in the game, they come in much later. And for the Abby stuff that they revealed, we saw why. So whether you agree with that or not, at least we saw why. But I'm interested to see why this happens, because we don't really know. Why did they start showing this group this early? So I am intrigued and interested to see why they do that.
Well, I think it's sort of implied by the final conversation in the episode as to why they're showing them.
Sure.
Because it's like, oh shit, the people we're tracking, like, they fucking demolished all these people.
Right. Yeah. They
Because
wanna
in the-
reinforce.
Because in the game, they make a point when, not to jump ahead, but when Dina and Ellie do set out and kind of get to Seattle, they do have in-game conversations of like, how big do you think this group is? How many people do you think that there are? And you kind of pick up notes and learn more about, it's implied kind of how big the WLF's operation is.
Mhm.
But in this moment in the show, I guess they're trying to kind of plant the seeds, because you don't have interactive elements like that in the show. I guess they're trying to plant the seeds of like, oh, they're bigger. We're kind of in over our head on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they just want to reinforce that they're ruthless and that they're not
They're
just
militaristic.
They're not just a ragtag group of like stragglers kind of a thing. Because they mention when they're talking about when Dina's talking about the WLF, and she was like, "Oh yeah, Eugene said doesn't think there's many of them left," so they don't really kind of know what they're getting into. But then
that it cuts to the end in the Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's just the Curb song, and then you see what happens to them. It is. I mean, it is definitely strange to see them this early, but I don't. It's kind of like a no harm, no foul kind of thing because you.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it.
You get nothing out of this. You just see a new group of people, and then you see what happens to them when we get to the end of the episode. And you're kind of like, okay, those are people that are going to be around, I guess.
Right.
They always make me wish I could whistle.
Yeah.
That's hearing that whistle though. I was like, "Hey yo!"
Yes, I was like that.
Hey yo!
It's very important to that group.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, the look and the feel of them was like going to like a convention and seeing like cosplayers.
Yeah.
Or like a pop-up museum for like a show or something, and you
crazy.
see like the actual stuff. Like it was like something I love, like come to life. They just nailed it. The scars on their face,
scars, and
the weapons,
the ragtag weapons.
Yes,
the symbol on the back of their cloaks.
Yes.
So a part of me, not to derail it, and part of me really loved this scene just because I find that group very interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
But this was the most controversial change of the episode for me because of what Zooboy was kind of talking about earlier. I get this is a show, so I'm willing, benefit of the doubt. I'm accepting a change. Maybe it's a good thing to introduce this group so they don't feel like they come out of nowhere a little bit later. But their introduction in the game was one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
That just shocked me. It made me feel, and I'll kind of dance around exactly how they do it because they could still do it.
Yes, for sure.
Which they've proven to do because that happened later this episode.
Well, I have a note that says
we got
this
something.
was the Zooboy "I told you so" moment.
Yeah, so there's still a chance that they're going to do that intro.
But it was one of those moments where I felt like I was Ellie when we're introduced to these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're shocked. Because she's shocked.
Yeah.
In day one, they set them up. You find a little shrine of the prophet, which they mentioned.
Yep.
There was some gradual world building that kind of felt more mature in the video game than here.
That is my main critique. Before I go into that, I just want to say, Bender, definitely. Yes, I am in a hotel room. I'm in Disney. But also, Harpo, don't look it up.
Don't look it up.
For sure.
Do not do that.
Enjoy
the ride.
There are people know various levels of spoilers, but the less you know about this game, I feel like, or the story, the better.
Yeah, you look up one thing and you accidentally learn 3 other things.
You're like, oh, I didn't want to know all that.
Yeah.
That's a dicey thing.
Like Austin is saying, I'm not. When they first showed up, I wasn't upset. I was just like, why are they doing this?
Mm-hmm.
When I started to feel negative about it, is when it felt like it was just vomiting exposition towards that. It didn't. This is something strange because I feel like Last of Us is very good at not doing that, but this was like explaining who they are, just talking about the prophet, stuff like that. And then when it got really bad for me is when the guy starts talking about the types of whistles.
You're right.
I'm like in the game, you figure that out and you see what each one means and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wish they would have. I wish the conversation would have stopped about 15 minutes, like before it actually stops.
You're right. He might as well have just looked at the camera and said, "So this whistle means this. This one means this.
This is important."
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think this scene, like I said before, it's just there to show the ruthlessness of the WLF and that they're kind of
which is
that's really
it's fine,
all
and
it is.
I get that. I'm okay with it.
But you
but
could
I
do it a
just
different
think-
way.
And
I
also,
know. Yeah.
it goes on a little too long. They reveal,
right.
I think, a little too much.
Yeah.
But again,
It's almost
they did
like
the
you
same
could've-
thing with
you-
Abby,
you-
so maybe there's a reason.
You
for
could have
it.
just showed them walking and just the backs of them, and maybe hear the whistle, and then them find them dead, and just don't really
Yeah.
say anything else. You know, I feel
Yeah,
like that's
or
could be
even
just as
just
effective.
the last scene. You know that
Yeah.
you're talking about. That
Could've
still conveys like because it's Ellie's putting together that the WLF did this. The audience can also put together that the WLF did this, and
Right.
we still get the impact of it.
Does Zoo, did your parents, since they didn't play, did they ask you who they were immediately as soon as they saw them? Or
My mom did.
yeah,
And it's very interesting because my dad said he doesn't know if it's the case, but he said he thinks that the show is trying to make him think that they are a peaceful group. And then my mom said, I didn't take that at all. I think that they're bad guys.
Mhm.
So my mom and dad, again, are at
Yeah.
odds on how they're taking
Well,
this.
it's-
So.
yeah.
So
I know my
that's
dad
interesting.
asked me, and it's like, oh man, I gotta dance around telling you who they are. I'm just like, listen, you just remember them, just keep it in the back of your brain. Remember
Yeah.
these people that you've seen them.
Right.
But I get it. They're wanting to like establish this now, so
Yeah.
that way a little bit later, when it does become a little bit more important, it's not coming out of left field. But
Yeah,
Yeah. For
there's
sure.
no shock for when they show up.
it was
Like,
still
oh,
just
okay.
fucking cool seeing them though. Like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, like the costume, the makeup, it was all just so perfect.
And I don't know if you guys were expecting them to be shown this
No.
episode, but
No.
I wasn't either. So it's like
Because it
as soon as-
cuts and you just see the
I was
symbol,
like,
and I went,
whoa.
I went,
Right.
Yeah. I was definitely not expecting them at all. But I think I again I didn't write this scene down, but I think the next scene is with Jesse, right?
Yep.
Okay. So again, I don't really have anything to say about this. So if you guys do, you have the floor. But I
of course,
I do like what it
Stop
does
talking
for
about
Jesse. Yeah.
I got 3 points. It establishes Ellie isn't fully incapable. She's been doing crunches, she's been doing push-ups. You know, she's not starting from zero when she goes to Seattle. She is
True.
still like a very ferocious little monster. Jesse is on the council. I really
Well, that's right. I forgot. That's where they reveal that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
I really like that. Not to always like bring up like Game of Thrones or something, but I love like when characters have like a political in. You know, it's like, oh, you know, vouch for me. You know,
Yeah,
oh, she just
yeah.
bought a vote. Like, that stuff is just always is very interesting to watch for me. And her trying to like bargain with him, and he's like, I can't do that. But then subtly, he's like, write your thoughts down. You know, no one's gonna listen to angry.
That's my favorite part is when he told her to write it down because you
Yeah.
know coming up later, you know, maybe may or may not shape your opinion of what happens later on in the episode.
Right.
You know,
And it
so
was.
I thought it was kind of
smart.
interesting. He's like, make sure you write it down.
Yeah.
It was smart by Jesse because it shows you Jesse knows Ellie
Mhm.
and he cares about her, but he knows that a very Ellie thing would be to march into the council room and say, "They killed Joel. We're fucking going after him. I don't give a fuck what any of you say.
Exactly.
This is the right thing to do. Whether you go or not, I'm going. So fuck y'all." But
And
that's
it's just-
not how you win over people.
It's just more world building of the relationships with Ellie and other characters too.
Right.
You know, so that's always nice to see.
Agreed.
Yeah. Jumping ahead just like a hair. Yeah, you said march into the council scene to yell at him. When the one woman like stands up like on the chair or the box or whatever, is like, we all lost people. If Ellie hadn't composed themselves in this moment with Jesse, she in that moment would have been like, yeah, well, you fucking lost him to a clicker or whatever. You know?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
I lost him to a vindictive bitch, you know.
Right. That is
could have been like oh shit, but
yeah,
not good.
Right. That's the difference. Again, Jackson did lose a lot of people, but none of them were murdered.
Yeah,
except for Joel,
it was like
that does make a
versus
difference.
Nature.
Exactly. And
yeah, I got some thoughts on that fucking council scene.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm sure we'll talk about this for a bit. But the first thing I noticed, honestly, we don't get many moments of levity and humor in The Last of Us, but fucking Scott, that actually gave, like, I laughed out loud when Bro's talking about his fucking corn.
Oh man,
Yeah,
and I'm just thinking, like, while he's talking, I'm like, any askers? Like who the fuck gives a fuck who you saying, bro? And then Tommy and Maria are basically they validate what I'm saying. They're like, bro, you missed why we're here? We're not talking about your fucking corn.
They're hitting the MoMA. Just the
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, especially for an episode that is so, dark and sad. That was so funny, and that's
the balance of humor this season has been really,
it's
really
just
solid.
the dry delivery. He's like, it's an important crop. Like,
and then I love his line where Maria's like, or I think it was Maria or Tommy, I don't remember one of them, but they're like, stay on topic here, and he's like, I don't really have an opinion about the Seattle things. I'm like, all right, so what the fuck are you saying, bro? So the fuck
I really liked that line.
I wanted to say it while we were all here.
That's kind of reflective of a lot of the current state of some crazy things that are happening in the real world. But I'll leave that at that.
I mean, you're spitting. But I do think it was funny. And again, like you said, they are doing a nice balance with the humor. We have more of that with Dina and Ellie later this episode. But I feel that this is why I don't even know how to explain it, but this is humor done right in a dark, sad
It reminds me a lot of the Two Towers, because that movie is very
okay.
But that movie's also hilarious. There's so many good jokes in that movie.
Spitting.
The taters, Precious. What is like that cracks me up.
Yeah. And I think it shows that, I've seen so many people say, oh, you want everything to be like a Zack Snyder movie. It's like, no, Zack Snyder also doesn't get it. He doesn't do it right either. That's just dark and gritty for the sake of being dark and gritty. It's not like serious dark. That's edgy. That's what that is.
Too much.
Right. When Last of Us does it, and it's not like they can't have humor, because they can. I think that tone of humor is what matters. And I feel like I don't think this is totally inconsistent. But
there are moments of levity, because the story is going to be very bleak.
Right.
It is already very bleak, and you have to, in order to keep people on board, you have to have these moments where you can kind of breathe and relax a little bit, Whereas
obviously
it has to, to fit in with the context of everything else. It can't come out of left field and be like a MCU over the top hilarity, like it has to be like
making jokes
humor within the context of.
I always talk about making stupid jokes when Natalie Portman's dying of cancer in Thor Love and Thunder, but that's just
like when Thor's showing his butt in the movie and stuff like that.
It's again totally inconsistent, but
it just doesn't work.
I don't want to go too deep into it, of course, because it's a completely different show, but this week we also saw Andor, and that the two groups, the rebellion group, that was like riding the line for me of totally inconsistent. And I felt like in Last of Us they didn't do that at all. I felt like, because they didn't dwell on it. It was like the scene started, fucking Scott's talking about corn. They say, fucking, who asked Scott? And then he sits down and it's done. And it's just this little fun moment that actually made me laugh out loud. And
You mean it doesn't come back later in the episode where like it's like, what about the corn? Like
he's a recurring bit.
No.
Yeah.
It's also funny because you have to
in the middle of about to die. No, shut up.
You also have to think about like everybody else in that room are probably all thinking the same thing of like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like we know why everybody's here and it's not to talk about
again.
This.
I love how the people in the show are having the same reaction as us, which is like, bro, fucking who ass? Like, sit down. Yeah. No one cares about your corn, bro.
And we all know that one person, that will bring up some shit when it's just not the right time, and it's like, brother, like, read the room.
100%. But I something like that. I think Austin, you brought this up earlier in the stream, that as people who played the game, we pretty much knew how this was going to go. That of course they were going to vote no. But even someone like my dad was like, well, obviously they're not going to vote yes. So, and he's someone who doesn't know any spoilers for the game or anything. He's just watching the show.
It's just narrative sense.
Right, exactly. So I did start to feel like when that scene happened at the time, I was like, what is this here for? It just feels like filling time. But then we got some nice moments. So
there was a specific moment in this scene that it is a setup for a payoff later in this episode.
Yes,
absolutely. So there is like also, a purpose. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
Like asking for 16 people, like really?
Yeah.
Like, come on, bro. That's
are there 16 characters in this show.
That number is so high that when you hear it, you're like, of course not.
Right, exactly.
Of course. They wouldn't ask for that many people, even if they did ask for people. They wouldn't.
Right. And this is when we start to see them cut away to all the different people giving their speech. Seth's speech is before Ellie's, right? Because Ellie was okay. So when they cut to the guy before Seth, I was like, Carlisle. I was like,
he's preaching, he's yapping.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
but
okay,
he's right. That's the worst part.
Right, exactly.
Where the story is.
100% right, but also, who cares?
Yeah, I'm like,
of course.
Everybody... I want my action. I want my blood.
Yeah, and the lady who stood up in the chair. Who cares? I'm sorry. Who cares?
And
Her line was, "My heart is with you, Ellie," or
Tommy
and Ellie, but it's too soon. And I'm sitting there like, it's been 3 months.
You know what I said immediately? I was like, get your fucking screaming kid out of here and go away. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Okay. You're like the person in the restaurant with the screaming child, and you want to make sure that you're about to have your point heard. Go away. Nobody has.
I feel that of course everybody knows, they've heard the expression, if you're gonna embark on a quest of revenge, you dig 2 graves. And of course this is a risky thing, and Ellie revenge is wrong, morally speaking. It doesn't solve anything, it doesn't do anything. So of course. Yeah, Lucy, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. But of course, revenge is not justifiable, right? Yeah, exactly. But I think that's of course. Well, I know, of course, that's why Ellie doesn't frame it as revenge. She frames it as justice in her speech. But of course, we're getting a little bit ahead. Before Ellie's speech, we have a Seth speech. And this is something that I was so curious about, because I don't know if any of you knew this going in, but I saw, I think it might have been from Craig Mazin, but someone said before the show that Seth would have an expanded role. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, because he only has ball for me.
Yeah, right. He only had 2 scenes in the game, and we've seen both those scenes on the show. So I was like, what? And then when he stood up, I was like, okay. And they went a different way than I was expecting. I did not expect Seth to be the one.
Goated Seth?
I was like, how did they take the most unlikable character in this franchise and make you like, all right,
Yeah.
all right.
Bruce Fitton.
Again, that
I
I
gotta
think.
give this one to Seth.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, bro, we load him up.
It's
Again,
almost like what he says is what you want Ellie to say, which is what's
Yeah.
so interesting
Yes.
about it. Like the
Right.
forceful nature of the way that he's kind of just like, what the fuck is wrong with all you people? You know,
Right.
like
But-
Are you guys living in this current world we're living in? There are fucking zombies out there. It's martial law, baby. Let's go get
He's
these
got the
guys.
cane, he's like
Yeah.
hobbling around.
There's probably a fucking blicky in that cane.
He's ready to go.
One can make the argument, though, that Seth might have hurt the vote.
Yes, absolutely.
So
That's
sure.
one of my favorite. That's why I really like this episode. A lot of the scenes bleed into each other, like
Right.
narratively. It's Jesse
Something
saying,
about
like,
consequences, right?
"Oh yeah, something about it."
that's
Um,
crazy, bro.
No one's gonna listen to angry, and so he really took the piss out of what Ellie was gonna say by being so angry and so brash.
But also, from Ellie's perspective, I'm sure Seth is
He's
the
probably
last
like-
person that she thought would be on her side for
You
this.
kind of see that on
It's
his
on our
too,
face.
Right.
when he's speaking.
And I do like how, I think it's Maria who says, Seth, you're not on the list. And he's like, I don't fucking care. Like, he just he starts saying his piece. And I was like, wow, again. Because if you look in the game, again, I love the game, but I could critique it sometimes. Seth is bad guy. He has
He's
no
a
redeeming.
punchline.
Right. Seth doesn't have any depth. He's just the town bigot. And this shows that there may be more to him. And again, it doesn't mean that all is forgiven. It doesn't mean that we should ignore that he's a bigot. But it does show that people are nuanced.
Mhm.
I wonder if that's important to the story of the last episode.
I
But
don't think so.
that's again, I've already talked about this with Joel earlier in the episode when I said that some people thought he was the villain. But there are no villains. So Seth did a shitty, awful thing. But also now we're like Austin said, we're like base Seth.
Goated?
Exactly.
The sauce?
Right. So that was really cool. And I love how it goes from that, like Tyler said, to Ellie, because that's probably what Ellie wanted to say, some version of that.
Yeah,
And
that
of
was
course
the
she
first
doesn't.
draft.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll fucking show
She
you
gave-
guys.
she-
Fuck.
They gave Seth the speech that they wrote originally. It's like, you say this, that I'm going to
Yeah,
follow up with.
he
with
found
this.
her first draft in the trash. He goes, damn.
Right.
I wrote this. This is
It-
good.
It's such an interesting scene because it's like Seth is doing what Jesse kind of warned Ellie not to do.
Yep.
And in the moment of him doing it, you kind of feel like, oh, thank God someone's saying it. But then the council's probably like, nah, fuck that. So it's very very conflicting forces.
And we could talk more about it when we talk about the actual vote. But we don't really know. Probably hurt. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they were never going to vote yes, which
Right.
is personally that's what I think. I think it was
No,
never going to
never
happen. But
Yeah.
there's again nuance
They
there,
could have
which is
had
what I'd
one
like to
more
see.
Yes.
Yeah, true. But when we get to Ellie's speech, again, calls back to Gail earlier in the episode because I don't believe a word that she's saying.
Yep.
When she's talking about, there's one line where she says that that if it was any one of you, that I would be out there. I'm like, no, you don't give a fuck about most people here, Ellie.
The biggest
I-
giveaway, and I think it was the same with Tommy earlier, is just the tone at which they're saying it. Like you can just hear in their voice.
Yes.
Like, this is all bullshit.
And I love when the camera, great cinematography, of course, but the camera like pans around, it shows everybody, and everyone's like listening to Ellie, and then it shows Gail, and she's like, like, what the fuck is this?
Which
Fuck
even
off,
they
what
kind
is
of
it?
pan to Dina, and Dina kind of just she
Yeah.
nods a little bit, but it's very
Yeah. I
Like
was
Dina's
gonna
not
say,
as basically like,
I love the look Dina gives Ellie when she pulls this out of her pocket because she's like,
She's like, what?
what the?
You wrote that
Who
down?
are
I mean,
you?
there
You
could
been
maybe be an
replaced?
argument that maybe her speech hurt the vote too, because everyone could be like,
so
kind
full
of
it.
she's not really being honest. She wants to say more of what Seth said.
See,
There's also some truth to that. They know that Ellie is more of a "fuck you, get shit done" kind of a.
I do like the way I take it. I think that the town probably believes Ellie because that's what makes Gail different. Because she doesn't.
True.
And she knows it's bullshit because it is. And
pandering.
I think that everybody who knows Ellie, Dina, Jesse, Maria, Tommy, they all know that that's bullshit because that's not how Ellie would act. But as Jesse says, you have to not be Ellie in order to sway the council. And of course, it doesn't work. But I think that the fact that she tries and does the way that Jesse advised her to shows that for a little bit she's thinking before she acts, which is not very Ellie.
Right.
But with Jesse's advice, it makes sense. But I want to, I don't know if I want to pull you guys, but I want to know all of your opinions in comparison to mine with how everyone voted, because we don't know. We don't know who said yes. There's 3 yeses, so we could assume that's Tommy, Jesse, and Maria. But is it?
It's not Maria.
Because
Maria's a definite no.
There are different ways that we can read this, and Neil Druckmann has talked about things like this in the past, where he said that if he doesn't write it into the story, that even if it's his opinion, it's not necessarily what happened. And in the podcast, Neil and Craig talk about the vote, and Troy Baker, who hosts the podcast and obviously plays Joel in the video game, him and Neil say that they're not 100% sure if Tommy voted yes. And Craig is like, sorry, you're both wrong. Tommy voted yes, absolutely. And then
wow.
Craig and Maria's actor from the show, Maria said, I don't think Maria would vote yes. And Craig said, no, she is. And I think I got to disagree with Craig there, because I don't think Maria would vote yes.
I was going to say, I think Maria and Jesse both voted no. Like, I think it was Tommy and 2 other of the Glup shittos that we don't know.
Right. And because I love when you see Tommy look around, he's like, really, Jesse, guys?
Jesse looks so like, kind of like, I was never going to vote for you. Like when they kind of show them all at the end. Like, I don't take that as a disappointed they didn't vote. It was more of like a relief that they didn't. Right. At least to me.
And I like that it doesn't, we don't know, because, there are different opinions. Maybe they voted yes, the characters that we know, maybe they voted no. But I feel like Tommy gets it, and Tommy does want revenge, justice, as I'm sure him and Ellie would frame it. But Maria knows that there's no point in this, and I think Jesse does as well. I wrote it down later in the episode, but I can bring it up now. As Dina says, he's Captain Wyoming. Jesse. Yeah. I don't know if Jesse would vote to take more people away from death.
Do you think they kind of frame it in a way that they want the viewer to just assume it was Maria, Jesse, and Tommy that voted yes? Since
I don't think so.
It's too simple.
Yeah, I think you can view it that way. I don't think the show tries to not make you view it that way, but I think it's left up to interpretation. Yeah. Obviously it doesn't matter because it wasn't close.
Yeah, and it also just
is like very. It's at least clear enough that he's yes. I think in his body language and him obviously being like right there in the center, he's a little bit more obvious in the like just camera angles. There's a lot more focus on him, and he's just as close to Joel as Ellie is. And I think the disappointment on his face with the final vote, kind of sways me to
I kind of
yes on him.
like whenever Ellie's talking, giving her speech, I feel like they kind of cut towards Maria and like show like a reaction, like kind of like a surprise reaction that they're reading this like composed, kind of opposite speech. But then I think it's just like a throw off because they're going to vote no. So.
It doesn't sway her enough.
I would also argue the vote in the show is sort of reflective or symbolic to how everyone feels in the game, because even Maria in the game is kind of just like, don't really want you to do this, but can't stop you.
Right.
It's not really a yes or a no.
Right.
So you look at the vote and it's like, I don't really know who would vote what. It doesn't really matter. But bottom line is, I mean, overwhelmingly it was a no.
And that's, I think, the important point of Ellie's speech is when she's like, I'll respect whatever decision the council makes. It's like, nah.
I'm
sure that is true.
I'm
Everybody
sure
knows they're going to do whatever they want.
But I'm sure that she was already starting to pack.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it like didn't just go to like the next scene, backpack on, just
right.
truck along.
There's a line in the game that I really like that we got kind of similar variations in the show, but it's not exactly, where Ellie says to Tommy, you can't talk me out of this. And I love that because there's no way that Ellie would not go. And this is very similar to something I brought up last week, if you guys remember, which is these hard choices that we think of when we're watching for the characters involved are not hard at all. Joel was always going to save Ellie. That's not a hard decision for him. Abby was always going to kill Joel. That's not a hard decision for her. And now Ellie was always going to go to Seattle. It's not a hard decision for her. These characters, and it's why I think all three of them have such depth, is they are not, I don't want to say a one-track mind, but they're so they have such conviction in their decision making that it was never going to go another way.
Well, it's the easiest decisions for them that bring about the biggest consequences.
Right, for sure. So when you see, is it the very next scene?
No, next.
No, it's not. It's right. But in a few scenes when we see Ellie packing, even though of course we know from the game that she's going to Seattle, I'm sure people who didn't know from the game, and even just us from a show perspective, were like, of course she's going. It's not. It was never going to be anything.
Oh, the council said no. I guess I'll stay in Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, what will I ever do?
Yeah,
I'll try again at the next vote. Can I get 15 people instead?
The show cuts to black.
Yeah.
Curb music rolls. The show's over.
But again, as we see Gale in that scene, just not believing anything that Ellie says, then we see Gale at a baseball game. And when Tommy comes up to her, I was interested to see where this was going. And one could make an argument that based on this conversation, I could see it goes both ways. But one could make an argument that Gale's kind of a shitty therapist. Now, of course, you can go the other way as well, like I said. But from that conversation, the way I take it is she's given up on Ellie. And I think that, when she says specific things to Tommy, like it's not nurture, it's nature. And there are just some people that you can't save. I think that Gale sees that she's tried. Ellie she didn't take her help when Gale offered. And throughout the whole episode, in that scene in the beginning, in the council scene, we see that Gale easily sees that she's a liar, that Ellie's a liar, that Gale sees that. And she's kind of done with it. She's like, this is who she is. She's not going to change. Joel didn't make her this way. She's essentially damaged, and it's not your responsibility, Tommy. And I think that there's different ways you can read that, because maybe Gail, similar to Ellie, isn't exactly saying what she thinks. She's saying what maybe she thinks Tommy needs to hear or should hear. And there's another level of that. But you could also say, like I said earlier, that she's just done. And in a way, you could frame that as being a bad therapist, because I don't think a true good therapist. Well, first of all, she's an alcoholic, which is it's
That
not great
line-
for this part. But
the Catherine Hahn is amazing. I love her so much. That it fucking killed me when she's talking about how who do you talk to? How do you handle it? This must have been like a hard few weeks for you. She's like, well, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah,
It's just-
exactly.
I kind of feel
Only-
I'm on the side that like Gail hasn't said a truthful thing really yet,
Okay.
outside of I'm an alcoholic, and it wasn't that
all
you
the
killed
weed I
him, it
could
was the
get.
way you killed him. I think that's like those are like the two most truthful things she said. I don't know. I just feel like there's something seditious going on here with, I don't know. Maybe there's not. Maybe it's
I got to say something about this scene too. What is it with like
See that, Harper?
what is it with post-apocalyptic stories and always having a scene involving baseball?
shout out to Gail for sitting damn near on the infield, knowing damn well them kids ain't going.
Because I was thinking about this reason. There's a scene in Interstellar, like right before a dust storm comes.
Yeah,
they're at,
yeah,
like
yeah.
a shitty baseball game, and then in A Quiet Place Part 2, when they do a flashback right before like
Yep.
the aliens or whatever you want to call them invade, they're at a baseball game. I'm like, there's something here. Like, there's something so American about the post-apocalyptic story in baseball. Like, I find that really fun, and I guess it's because it's Middle America and baseball is so
Yeah.
big in Middle
You
America.
got a
but-
weapon to defend yourself, That's
Fucking
what kind
hell,
of weapon you
Psycho.
have in
Oh
basketball.
my god.
Real quick, I wanted to say, the way that the scene shifts to the baseball game, the way the opening scene shifts to the hospital, both times I were like in a flashback for like
I
a
did too.
split
I
second.
did too. I did not know
Yeah.
that was
Yes.
currently
And it
happening.
was
I was like,
crazy.
what is
I
that?
agree.
Twice.
I thought
I
that
was
a
about to be
flashback at
even. I
first
was
as well.
about to be upset. I was like, "We're getting a flashback with this character. That what is happening?" And then it was like, I was like, "Oh, okay."
See, what you don't realize is that Gail is actually the lead, and it's all
Good. Bring it on. Bring it on. I love Catherine.
I think they're setting us up for Last of Us Part 3. It's just Gail in the game.
Yeah, there you go.
They're just getting us introduced.
Revenge for Eugene.
I do think about that sometimes. If they do a Last of Us Part 3, which my opinion is that they're already working on it, and Neil is being
What the hell
coy
is that
about it.
game gonna be?
But
I don't know.
Yeah,
Gail. Clearly,
will they introduce characters that were show only like Gail?
How much is part 3 going to be influenced by like there being a show now?
Mhm.
That is
And
amazing.
how much of a time jump are they going to? Is there going to be a time jump? You
Right.
know?
This is a little bit of a side note, but before I go into that, I just want to say, no need to
Oh,
apologize,
Doug.
Doug, but
Oh,
appreciate
Doug.
you stopping by for sure.
What up, Doug?
But I feel like there are people just in Neil's life who know the answer of what's going on with Last of Us Part 3, if there will be one, because when Last of Us 2 came out, I think it was in the Last of Us 2 documentary, but Neil Druckmann said, when Last of Us 1 and people asked him about a sequel, when Last of Us 1 was out, he was like, "Oh, we'll see. I don't know." And then
Doing the
he
same
said
shit.
after the fact that he was lying through his teeth because he was already working on 2 when he said those interviews. I'm sure he's doing the same thing now.
Doing the same thing.
But
I
I was
can think
unaware
of
of this.
something, shut
I
up.
read this headline, and this headline was Caitlin Dever was one of the first people, or she knew about Joel's death before mostly anyone. And I'm like, well, no, because fucking everyone who played the game knew before her.
Right.
But actually not. And this is something I thought was very cool after reading the article. And then it was an article based on an interview. And then I watched the interview. Caitlin Dever knew about Joel's death like almost 10 years ago when they were doing the Last of Us movie. And obviously it didn't come to fruition. But she said that Neil Druckmann talked to her about what the plans for the second game was. So she said she's kept this secret, for 5 years before the game came out. Wow. Yeah, and then, 5 years since then. So,
shout out.
I think that's really cool that this is something that, again, I've seen so many people say that because Last of Us was a success, that then Neil was like, I'm going to take away Joel from everyone who liked him and subvert expectations. I think people hate that phrase because of Rian Johnson.
I like that.
Which is neither here nor that stupid, but
I like that in today's world, for some reason, people don't understand the concept of maybe people just write a story. And that's like the full depth of it,
Right.
Maybe exactly. That people are just trying to tell a story and there's really no other ulterior motives.
Yes. I did see this, Psycho, that you're saying. He's kind of walked back this a bit, but I do think that still what he said in the game and the documentary is accurate. But then with this, I am very interested to see, because he said he would love to tell this idea he has for a Tommy story, but he doesn't know how it will be told. A book, a comic. He said maybe it'll be shown in the show one day.
I'll eat it up.
There you go.
I'll eat it up.
Yeah, if that's an opportunity to have a flashback with Tommy, like we all love Gabriel.
Whatever I gotta get. Whatever I gotta put it in a book, I'll buy it. Put it in a comic, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
The show, I'll watch
DLC maybe? Who knows? Whatever.
DLC, I'll buy it.
Yeah. However he wants to tell that story, I'm sure that would be really interesting. But bring it back to the Gale and Tommy scene. I'm sure we have a lot to say about that.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. So I don't necessarily think that she's given up on Ellie. I think if anything, she's more interested in it now because of her line where she says, that girl's a liar. There's one person she told the truth to, and she cuts herself off. I think she's really hung up on the last conversation she had with Joel, because she tried bringing it up to Ellie earlier in the episode, and now she's bringing it up to Tommy here. She may not be like obsessed with it, but it is definitely in the back of her brain, especially when she has the line about your last moment with someone doesn't define them, but she is a therapist. She might blame herself for not taking Joel so seriously, and not being able to like maybe help him with this relationship, this strained relationship with Ellie a little bit sooner. There might be some like a little bit of baggage there in the back of her head, but I do think the point of this scene is more in Tommy's corner. I don't think Tommy's really talking about Ellie for this scene. I do think he's asking for justification for maybe some things that he's going to do or not do. Talking about the nature versus nurture, I think that line really struck him because he kind of backs off, kind of looks away from her during that, because he was with Joel for a long time doing things that he does regret. Yeah. But he has this moment a little bit earlier where there is a little bit of malice in there, and now he's kind of bringing it back to this moment, and all of her lines about, some people just can't be saved. All of that really felt like it was resonating with him, but I don't think he was thinking about Ellie in that moment. I think he was thinking about himself and maybe his relationship with Joel, and because he brings up how he thinks Joel rubbed off on Ellie. Maybe he's talking about how Joel rubbed off on himself. And then she obviously rebuttals with the nature versus nurture. And like I said, he kind of backs away from that because I think he wants to be a hero. We've seen this throughout the show. We've been told this throughout the show that he has kind of a hero, noble character need, and being confronted with the fact that maybe he is also capable of malicious things is uncomfortable for him. So I really loved. I just loved all these scenes with Catherine O'Hara. She really has brought out these different levels between characters and the dialogue and the like levels. Because like when you were talking about how you think she's given up, I was like, huh, that is interesting. I don't think you're wrong by any means. It's just an interesting, different takeaway from like that scene.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad that you brought this up, because I didn't even think about anything that you're saying when watching it. But now that you brought it up, I could totally read it that way.
Right.
I didn't think about like Tommy's perspective at all, but everything you're saying, it does apply to Tommy as well. So I love that. That's why I love that we do this, because that's such a completely different perspective than the way I took it. So that's so interesting, because I again, like I said, it's so accurate to Tommy, because especially in the show, but even in the game as well, we see that Tommy has done things, probably really bad things, that he regrets. I think in part 1, if I remember correctly, in the game, that Joel is like, I kept you alive or something, and Tommy's like, wasn't worth it. And
yeah,
you just see that's really bad.
I'll kind of dance around it, but the opening scene of the second game, the conversation,
yes,
and you're convinced that we will still get a variation of that, maybe in flashback or something.
Yeah, I'm starting to not be convinced about that.
Yeah,
part,
he's walking it back.
Yeah, because
backpedal.
Right, we'll see. But again, like I said, there is I told you so moment
there's
later.
no zoo guarantee on that one.
Yeah, that one we'll see.
But if that scene is last thing real quick.
Yeah.
If they do adapt that, Tommy has to shoulder some of the blame that Joel also gets. So it's just very interesting. Tommy's so interesting. A good show.
Yeah,
okay,
great.
I'll pass it off to you, Doctor.
Great character.
Yeah. I would like to get that scene. Only real thoughts I had on this. I kind of felt like she was talking, like Austin said, she was talking about Tommy as well as Ellie, kind of both for sure. I don't know if I'd say she's given up or not. I don't know if I'm convinced in that yet. Like I said, I think she's just lying. It's like a lot, just in general. Maybe that's just my own take as like, why does this character exist? But yeah, it just he makes a point to really drive home that, like, Joel did bad stuff, and it just further reinforces the overall narrative, which you've said a million times. There's no good guys and there's no bad guys. Like, this is just a world where people have to do what they have to do to survive. And I like that, especially coming off the heels of like Joel's death. They really want to enforce, like, yeah, it sucks, but also everybody in this
again, like how
everybody in this world sucks.
Right, like how Joel is a complicated character. I know we're gonna slightly move ahead,
and it's foreshadowing, and just this episode,
yeah,
because the next scene is Ellie leaving, but we'll talk about the beginning of this scene,
or John Wick scene.
We'll talk about the beginning of the scene in a second, but later on in the scene, when there's the whole dynamic with Seth, it's again kind of mirroring both Joel and Ellie, where we see Seth has nuance to him.
Dude,
that's what people do. People have nuance.
Yeah.
Seth goated again.
Dude, I'm telling you, the more you saw in this episode, the more you're like, this guy, I'm going to battle with this guy.
Yeah, man.
I fucking storming Normandy with this dude, bro.
Yes.
Like, let's do it.
That's
I really like this actor's performance too, as Seth.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We'll definitely go back,
like a Western, like rough and tough cowboy or something. He's got that aura.
But as Austin says, it's Ellie's John Wick moment preparing. But
You packing
I
any
love
food or just guns?
I love how again we see that she does not trust Dina 100%. But Dina knows her too well. And I think at this point, I think Dina, again, something I love about Dina in the game, but Dina is a ride or die. And I think by this point, probably for even longer than even Ellie suspects, that Dina would do anything for Ellie. Dina absolutely cares about her.
Is how Dina sees.
And yeah, exactly. And I think that Dina, because that she loves Ellie and cares about her so much and knows her so well, this is something that Ellie just doesn't expect, and she doesn't reciprocate at this time because she lies to Dina. You know, she says, "Oh, I'm just going to sleep." Dina says, "I don't think you are." Of course, Dina knows her, but I love how, you know, Dina's like, "Oh, you got medical supplies with all these guns," and just
she's just gonna
where are you going? Like,
break open one of her bullets and do the
exactly
the Revenant when he seals his neck up with the.
They needed a pack mule to. Ellie
was
like, where's a pack mule? Like, I got to take all these weepons.
She's played the game. She doesn't want to be going and opening doors the whole time.
Right. It has no time to reload. Like if I got to reload, I'm just gonna switch. Like
new gun.
Yes, and Dina, you know, she's prepared. Of course, she's when she says what route, and Ellie's just like, you know, northwest, and Dina's like, well, you know, we'll go along this route. And you see Dina has clearly thought this out, even though they no longer have 16 people. It's just the two of them. Dina is still absolutely willing. And again, I think that's, you know, how she just shows that she was always willing to go on this journey. But it's not like in the game, it's for Ellie. There's a scene in the game where Dina says, "You go, I go." That's part of it, but in the game or in the show, it's also like, no, I love Joel. This is fucked up. I was there. We're going to go kill these motherfuckers. And I think that I like that change. That it gives Dina more of a reason than just you go, I go, which is sweet. That's a sweet moment in the game. But I like that Dina has, you know, because it's a lot to ask to go 600 miles away to kill people from a group you don't really know much about. But like I said, Dina's a ride or die. Love Dina. We all need a Dina in our life. And I think that going forward, the Dina that we, or the Dina Ellie relationship that we like from the game, that they are building on that, and instead of just right there. So I imagine that we will start. We've already at the end of this episode, we start to see some of that, and we'll get to that. But then, do you guys have anything to say about Dina in this scene? Otherwise, I'll move to Seth.
Just real quick, kind of, I guess. Just kind of give them their props. It feels like a minor course correction, but for the better. Because I remember there being a lot of like nitpickiness over the like, oh, how they get to Seattle. Them taking the time in the show to actually be like, this is how we're going to Seattle.
Sure. Yeah.
So
right. Exactly.
I like that. Although it never bothered me in the game, I just kind of accepted it. I like that it's here. And like you were saying, it expands on their relationship. I love the line, you know, you could have just asked. I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, now you do.
Again,
it was so hard.
She's a ride or die.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
Well, and we get to Seth, of course. And Seth is helping again.
The man of the hour.
But I love how Seth, it's not like all is forgiven, because Ellie doesn't forgive him.
No, she's very cold.
But
you're sure it was friendly?
Right.
And Dina's in the back. Jesus fucking.
Yeah,
I really just love the I love the approach. I love the way that, like, for a show that we've argued maybe there are points where they're talking too much. I like that there's really no dialogue here from Seth. He just kind of sees them off, and there's like a handshake and an understanding, and that's
he's like, "This is better. Take this rifle. It's a better one."
I love that. He's like, "This is a better gun. We don't like each other. We understand the assignment. Get the fuck out of here."
And again,
it's finding common ground, you know?
Right.
Like,
it is. I know. I've seen some people, and again, I hate to say they just don't get it, but I've seen some people criticize Ellie in the game for not forgiving Seth when he's, apologizes, and they, the whole people hate the bigot sandwiches line and all that. But it's perfectly,
Ellie does not have to forgive this.
Right. I'm not going to tell someone they have to forgive. But also, if Ellie were to forgive Seth, that's cool too. But if she doesn't, that's also cool. It's up to her, and that's like real life. People, sometimes they'll forgive, sometimes they won't. But I love how in this scene,
it's interesting. The same people. Sorry, tangent.
No, you're good.
Tangent episode. The same people who are all bent out of shape over Ellie not apologizing to someone who called her a slur are the same people who are like, where are all the macho men, like stone cold killer, like and that's what Ellie fucking is. Like,
would you apologize, bro? No.
Yeah, like, come on.
Never apologize, bro. Say what you mean.
Tangent fungus. Because I wrote down, I was like, Ellie just oozes like badass aura, like in
absolutely
them on the back of the fucking horse, and just.
I mean, I think that's something in life
Dina says, bro.
That's something in life that makes people uncomfortable. Like, sometimes you don't have to forgive people if you don't want to. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like,
yes, I struggled for a long time with that because I'm always someone who's like forgive and forget, but at some point
you can't.
Maybe you can't. Right.
There is a line that's like unforgivable. Like, you crossed it. I'm sorry.
And I like that she doesn't forgive him, but there's still that like handshake moment where Ellie's like, I can acknowledge
we're on the same side.
Yeah, exactly. That we're on the same side. So that was nice to see. And again, like Tyler said, there's not a lot of dialogue there. It's just, a mutual understanding.
Like, thank goodness he wasn't like, I just got to say, I'm so sorry again. It's like, no, you don't need to.
Yeah. It's like, that's not, you're not
I'm glad there wasn't a moment where Ellie, decided to, like, I appreciate the help, kind of not like, no, there doesn't need to be any of that. Also, I wish we could have got a gun upgrade like that easy in the
Yeah, why isn't Seth like an AI that just follows you around the game, just giving you?
Yeah, Seth should have been like, I need 15 of these and 20 of these and 4 of these.
I just had like the mental image of like, so Dina's coming up with the horse, and then like a workbench, like kind of just like.
Yeah, see,
Seth hands you a second holster, and then there's the voice line of "This'll do."
This will do.
Yeah, I only want to play No Return Now. If you could play as Seth, then I'm interested.
Bro, put him in. Put him in. That honestly, it'd be really funny if they did that. I think it's funny.
If he doesn't have the cane, I'm out.
Yeah,
I agree.
Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, that was a great scene. Just like
I love
this whole episode of all the like. I hate to call them changes. They're more like additions,
Yeah.
They've been so solid. It's one of the things I praised the most about last season, and here we are again. I can just sit here and like enjoy this as a show when they do stuff like this. It's a real treat for us real fans.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the next scene is a somber scene because we're at Joel's grave. And the interesting thing to me is it's actually said earlier in the episode, but the cemetery is not in Jackson in the show. It's 10 miles out, which is pretty substantial. It is smart. But I thought that was again, that's just one of those things that, like, for realism, it makes sense. You don't want to have a cemetery take up so much space. More people keep dying, you need more space. And also, if it's too close to town, people see it, and you don't want that.
Find you.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So there's again, just more realism aspects of that. So I did like that. But of course, we see Ellie at the grave and the little coffee bean thing. I thought that was really nice because obviously we know Joel.
This is the first time the show made me like tear up. That moment really got me. The coffee beans. I thought that was such a nice touch because that's not in the game, right? That's completely right. So like we know in the game he loves coffee,
right?
But seeing that,
who doesn't love coffee? He's a great guy.
Right.
I love coffee.
Yeah, I thought that was such a sweet moment.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I don't have a lot to say about this scene, but I feel like a broken record. Just Bella Ramsey's acting, man. Just
they're
great.
Yeah. I was sitting there as they're like their hands on the dirt, saying goodbye. I'm like, you're almost there. Like, grieve, go through the emotions. This is like what you should be doing. You should be saying like goodbye and stuff.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was an awesome scene. And,
beautiful.
Yeah. Beautifully shot too, and just it looked stunning, and
no need for words. Yeah, just 10 out of 10 scene
for sure. But then obviously Ellie and Dina go to Seattle, and there's a bunch of stuff actually that happens along this road, but I do like the scene where it was talked about earlier where they're naming musicians and they stop at P, which I thought was nice because I'm sure there was a little Pearl Jam thing. Right. So that was fun. But then we have the game conversation of Ellie and Dina talking about the first person they killed, except Dina doesn't say, and Ellie doesn't say the first either. She talks about the second. And I thought that was, again, showing that she's not 100% there with Dina yet. Mm-hmm. But also going into the second one, because from Ellie's perspective, rather, she's like, I did what I had to do. It had to be done. I had to save Joel. Very similar to how she's feeling now. I'm doing what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. It's, again, not something that she's thinking about, which she even says to Dina in this scene. I didn't think about it. I just had to save Joel. And I feel like even though that was, 5-6 years ago, it was like 5.5, I guess, because that was before the, little tiny time jump in season 1. But she still has that opinion of got to do what you got to do. Very Ellie, like Jesse says, that's very Ellie of you. And see in episode 2. But unless you guys have anything to say about that, I'll get into the big meat part of the road to Seattle. Of course.
Dude, I whenever there's montages like this, I wonder how long that takes them to film, because there were so many different locations that were just clearly real. Like they actually went to these beautiful Western like landscapes to film just this B-roll essentially, and it was breathtaking. So I just wanted to like shout out, location scouts and cinematographer and all that. Like that, it was. Yeah. I love just very atmospheric stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I liked how it's the journey to Seattle. Again, like you talked about earlier in the episode, how it's just more realistic again, and this
it doesn't cut to black and we're there,
right? And I like how we are in Seattle by the end, but it's not like we didn't do anything in Seattle. It's just we're there now. Now the rest of the show.
Yeah, what we said last week, by the time this episode ended, they needed to be in Seattle.
Right.
And we are.
Yeah, exactly. But, of course, then they have Ellie and Dina are in a tent.
Here we go.
Ellie and Dina are in a tent, and as soon as they're there, as soon as they're in the tent, I'm like, I wonder what's gonna happen here. And then Dina's like, all right, good night. And I'm like, okay, maybe not here. And then Dina turns the light back on, and I'm like, oh, hold on, what are we getting? And as soon as Dina says, I have a question, I'm like,
yep. I texted you. I was like,
this was Zoo. He just straight up stood up.
Zoo was just like,
well,
yeah. And
I literally smiled like a fucking moron. I was like, God damn it, he called it. Here we all were. Like, I don't think they're gonna do it. Where are they gonna do it?
Yeah.
All
so
right,
you know what, guys? Just always trust me. Never doubt me.
Right.
That's what it's explained. But I do think that, again, we didn't get the full scene. We only got the very small part of it of Dina saying rate the kiss. But interesting compared to the game is that Ellie is the one that says it's a 6. In the game,
below
it's Dina.
average.
Yeah. And of course, I don't believe Ellie for a second. That was a fucking 10 to Ellie. And Dina doesn't either, of course.
Ellie's like, I got straight up butterflies in my stomach right now, dog.
Right, exactly.
And it was a 4.
The way that she was looking at Dina when she said goodnight and turned off the light, she's like,
when
stay up all night talking about our feelings.
When Austin
It's like
texted
that
me,
first sleepover when you want to talk about like your
Yeah.
and stuff with your buddies.
Yeah.
when Austin texted me that I called it, I was like, because I knew immediately what he was talking about, of course. But then afterwards, I responded and I was like, I still think we're gonna get the rest of the scene. And Austin's like, well, you were right about that.
I
So
mean,
I'm probably gonna continue.
What am I gonna do now? I can't argue.
Yeah,
Nostradamus
Zeus the
over
prophet.
here.
yeah, exactly. Feel my love. But I think that I do think we're gonna get the rest of that scene. Ellie and Dina, clearly they're building their relationship, but slower. And again, we've talked about this multiple times this episode. That's really cool. And I love that scene. So I'm glad that we got the start of it, and there's still a second part and then a third part. So there's some more stuff going on. So that was nice. But we do get other useful information in that scene, which is Dina saying that she went back to Jesse, and you see that Ellie is clearly not happy about that. So we don't really know Dina's angle here. She's complicated. It's a complicated situation. So because Dina's giving mixed signals, does she want to be with Ellie? Does she not? Because then she says you're gay, I'm not, so what is Dina? Is it just a little drunk thing? Is it a fling?
Clarify that she was not that high. So
right. And then
subtly implying there was
exactly. That's why I'm saying mixed signals, because it's like she starts to lead Ellie down the path that it didn't mean anything. And then she's like, well, not really. It meant something. So I'm sure if I'm Ellie, I'd be like, well, what the fuck, Dina?
This is this is the following and unfollowing stage on Instagram right now. This is
right.
Yeah, and I like that we get it, but I also like that because they're building it at a slower pace, that she says goodnight, it's cut, and then we see Ellie and Dina stumble upon this group of people that we saw earlier in the episode, but now dead. Because we just see there is a little bit of time to rest. Like they have the whole Curtis and Viper moment, which I thought was very nice, because that's something that they talk about in the game and even earlier in the show. Curtis and Viper is a movie, that series that Ellie and Joel love to watch together, that Joel specifically really liked. Yeah. So having these little moments of levity, I think, Austin, that's how you said it earlier on. So that was nice, but just bringing it back from this, relationship building scene to then moments of levity, and then we get, oh my God, these people are dead, and this kid that we saw early in the episode is dead. And of course, I know I'm going above, I'm going a little fast, so you guys could talk about this whole part, but then we see Dina is she vomits. She just can't handle that. So that was really interesting. Again, the show moves at a quick pace here, but I like how it's done. It's like every scene from following through Seattle.
Its time.
Right. It's giving it time.
Pace,
yeah, but it's fast paced, but it still gives it time. Exactly.
Yeah. And
I think that when we see, this is the first little hint that maybe they're not 100% prepared because nothing bad even happened yet, truly. And Dina's vomiting at the sight of the dead kid. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then right after Ellie says, or Dina says, I guess there can't be that many wolves where not, where's the shooting? And then, of course, we see there's a lot of them.
A New Hope Empire shot of tanks coming in,
My dad's like, they got a fucking tank. And I was like,
right. They got a whole arm.
I'm like, they got a lot.
Yeah.
They got a lot.
I know I pretty much just broke down the rest of the episode. So if you guys have things to say about this, go ahead.
I'm going to use the restroom real quick. I just wanted to let you have your time to revel in the I told you so.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't want to deprive you of that.
Yeah.
But I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad we got the rating of the kiss thing. I like that. Was, I'm glad we got it specifically for you because I know you talked a lot about it. So.
Yep, and I love that.
And as far as the rest of it, I think it just serves to reinforce the idea that they have no clue what they're getting into, and the WLF are shown or are going to be a problem and all that. So I think it does a really good job setting us up for what should be like pedal to the metal, balls to the wall, for 4 episodes to go. So definitely a strong end to the episode of an episode that was already pretty good. Like, even though I didn't really care about the council scene at all.
Then we got some good stuff with Seth.
We got some good stuff, but I just this scene was filler to me. So, but overall, pretty good. And I like seeing the boots on the ground and the APCs rolling in. And
you see the WLF is they're full military. Like Joel said in his death scene, he said, "You guys look like military."
Yeah.
We see they absolutely are military.
Yeah, it's just there can't be that many of them. Eugene said, they were like one of the smallest ones. You're like, nah, bro.
This is another point in the episode where it plays the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode is the perfect example of the calm before the storm.
Yep.
It felt like a penultimate episode, but we have 4 episodes to go.
Yeah, very much the laying of the breadcrumbs of little things that will probably pay off or that we'll see later, and that they're kind of in over their head, and chaos is most likely to ensue.
Yeah. I mean, you see a kid, like, especially if you've never seen one before, like, oh yeah, you've seen zombies or whatever, but like, it's just like a dead kid, so it's definitely gonna fuck you up. So,
of course, especially because
think of the smell.
I don't think this is something that Ellie and Dina expected to see.
No.
I'm sure, again, probably showing that they're not 100% prepared, but they probably think that it's going to be hard, but they're going to run through the WLF,
Yeah.
Because I know Ellie's joking, but she says, like, Dina's like, there's not a lot of WLF, and Ellie's like, there's about to be a whole lot less.
Yeah,
of course she's joking badass Ellie, but still.
I think 15, 20, 25 people, like a small community, if that kind of a thing,
Right.
So they're making from the get-go WLF wolves. Dumbass. They're like,
again, it's just if Ellie, I know it's a joke, but the fact that she makes that joke, it's just like they are not prepared for what we see, and the audience isn't as well. Because we don't know anything about the WLF except that they're military. Then at the end of the episode, we see, oh shit, they have a lot. They have not just a lot of people, but they are well armed. They have tanks, you know, and
They
for
killed
some
an
reason,
unsuspecting group
exactly.
of people.
For some reason, we don't know why.
Who clearly
killed
are
this
not
one
as
group.
who clearly are not as prepared, like
Right.
weapon
It's
wise
hammer
and all
versus
that, as
tank.
them. Yeah, we got hammers versus fucking assault rifles. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
So
Well, Austin, if you have anything to say, because I think me and the two Tylers, we wrapped it up. For this, so.
Yeah, just want to echo what they said. I really, not much left to say. This was wishful thinking. When Ellie and Dina are riding into Seattle, a part of my brain goes, "Is this Rick riding into Atlanta?"
My brother thought the same thing, and my brother
like,
doesn't even watch Walking Dead. He just knows from like
that's an iconic
pop culture osmosis.
bro,
Yeah,
if we
exactly.
get if we get Shimmer just real slow with the hoof sound turned up at like just kind of doing their thing for like the open.
You know what? And just while Dina is going to be cracking her jokes, being all magnetic, and then out of the corner of your eye, you're going to see Shane rubbing his head. He's like, "Ask you something."
Hey, if we're going to drop a random John Bernthal in here, this show, I can only get so. I mean,
yeah.
No, they're going to climb into one of the tanks, and Darth Maul is going to be in there.
There you go. Yeah, they're going to grenade it up.
Yep. No, excellent episode, excellent end. I cannot wait to see what comes next.
It's gonna be a fun ride.
For sure.
These last 4 episodes.
Overall, I thought it was a great episode. Which again, I walked away from it with a different feeling as when I first watched it. You know, taking notes and seeing all these. The podcast and stuff like that definitely made me care about it more. But now we're into it. You know, we got this was the first 3 episodes, so we got 4, right? Yeah, we
I'm
got
more
4
excited for the next episode than I was for the show to like come
Start.
back.
Okay,
Yeah,
like Seattle.
I gotta agree.
There's so much meat on that plate.
Yep. We're in Seattle now, so now
I just think it's because
the story
like
has begun.
Yep,
we knew what was coming, and we were just like tired of.
I want to
all
get
right,
to it.
we have to get past this, and now we're like, all right, now we get to enjoy.
And now
the
everyone that hasn't
game.
played the game will understand why we've been so excited for it.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes.
And that's exciting.
Like how can you enjoy this? Like just wait.
It is impossible to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 without talking about Seattle.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there's a great line that I'll spoil a little tiny bit, but Ellie at a point in gameplay, she just says "fuck Seattle," and we're about to see why.
I went to Seattle shortly after playing the second game, and it was really cool seeing like the Ferris wheel.
You're like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You're like, oh no, look at that!
Yeah,
look at that.
yeah. A little bit of me was like,
Is there a stalker over there?
Overgrown, as much as I thought it would be.
This is what it looks like when somebody mows the yard.
Yeah. I'd love to go. I know.
Fun time.
I know. Psycho is in Washington State, the other side, not near Seattle, but I don't know.
The sucky part was we went like right after. It was like early 2021, and so a lot of COVID restrictions were still happening. So a lot of things like closed early, but I mean, it was still cool to go.
For sure, I'd love to go one day. So maybe, and again, I'm sure a lot of this Seattle stuff again is because Neil just loves grunge, which of course started in Seattle. Yeah, so I'm sure that it just makes a lot of sense. Even with all the the time, the distance between all these places, you're like, why set it in Seattle? I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
but
that's cool. Nothing's set in Seattle.
Yeah,
that we will absolutely see, because Seattle in The Last of Us Part 2 is almost a character like Gotham in Matt Reeves' Batman.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
I love that.
I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
But I think we might be done here, unless you guys have anything else to say. Yeah,
3 hours.
we're 2 hours in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm
But
good,
we're-
man. I think we covered everything.
yeah.
Oh,
This
you know
is
what? Psycho might be spitting. Sleepless in Seattle was.
there. You go. Of
It
course.
might
Yeah.
have been set in Seattle.
Bro, I thought
Yeah.
that was like New York. What are you talking about?
Oh, I must have been confused.
Yeah.
We are a little shorter than we usually go, but
I think it was nice and
This
tight
was-
though.
yes,
Yeah.
this episode had it was not as bombastic, of course, as the premiere or the second episode, and also I'm in Disney, so
Yeah.
shorter
You're on
episode
vacation.
is better anyway. I gotta go to
Yeah,
bed.
We'll have a lot to talk about next time, probably.
Yeah, for sure. Next week's gonna be.
We'll make it up. We'll add an extra hour to it.
There you go. Next week we got 5 hours. We're doing the
giving
figure
you
ball
guys
stuff.
15 minutes back. We're gonna take an hour and 25 next time.
There you go. There you go. I'm gonna hold you to that now. We're gonna have to make up content. Well, all right, boys.
Yeah.
That was the Yap of Us episode 4.
I'll
So-
say it for Jacob: endure and survive.
Endurance.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
I like that Jacob says that. And we will be joined next week with Jacob again.
Yep.
Yap of Us. I always get confused because we did one episode before the show.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
the Yap of Us episode 5 next week, talking about episode 4 of the show.
Yep.
It can be like that Justice League run. The first episode was episode 0.
Yeah, but
There
say
you go.
change it to 0, and then we can, fix
The
numbers.
prologue. It's the Yap of Us prequel.
Yeah.
So
All right.
Yeah.
That was a lot of
Thanks
fun,
for
boys,
watching.
as usual. So,
Yep. Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody.
bye.
Bye.
And